Chapter 29. When Li Tianlan woke up, it was already afternoon. He did not show up in his dormitory, but in the hospital of the Sky Academy. A single room, clean and elegant, light blue walls, a soft bed and dry and soft bedding. Fresh flowers and a plate of washed fruits were placed on the cabinet next to the bed. Right in front of him was a 55-inch LCD TV. Li Tianlan opened his eyes, feeling a little dazed and dreamy. His thoughts jumped from the gloomy and humid border to Huading, and then to the entrance maneuver of the Sky Academy. It took him a full half a minute to come back to his senses. He moved his body and sat up straight against the headboard. Almost instinctively he took out his mobile phone and turned it on. One of the more satisfactory things about the Sky Academy was that students were not prohibited from talking to the outside world on weekdays. Students were only required to turn off their mobile phones during some sensitive courses or maneuvers. After all, a considerable number of students here were different from Li Tianlan, Li Beidian, and others. They held official positions. For example, Ning Qianxing was the deputy battalion commander of the Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Praetorian Corps of Zhongzhou State. He came to the Sky Academy for further study. Once the Thunderbolt Battalion took action and needed his help, he had to go back and report as soon as possible. There were many people like Ning Qianxing who came to the Sky Academy with official identities. Some of them had more sensitive positions than Ning Qianxing. No matter where they were, they had to make sure that others could find them as soon as possible. Therefore, mobile phones naturally became a necessity for every student in the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan subconsciously turned on his mobile phone. At first, he did not know what he was going to do, but when he saw the picture on the screen he suddenly understood. On the screen, Li Tianlan's silly expression was so ugly that he could not bear to look at it. Qin Weibai, who was leaning against him, was smiling beautifully. Li Tianlan's eyes stayed on their interlocked fingers for a moment. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. There was joy, excitement, uneasiness, longing, and an almost illusory sense of loss and lack of confidence. He pursed his lips, opened the WeChat app on his mobile phone, and clicked on the dialog box with Qin Weibai. In the dialog box, Qin Weibai sent him another message. I found a very authentic Western restaurant in Bruxelles. The food is amazing. I really should come and try it with you. During the few days he was apart from Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan received messages from Qin Weibai every day. They were all trivial things about delicious food and beautiful scenery. Behind each message, there was a sigh that said they should visit together. Li Tianlan didn't know how to respond at all, so he never responded. The whole dialog box was filled with messages from Qin Weibai, one a day, neatly arranged. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment. He typed on the keyboard awkwardly and replied, I've completed the entrance maneuver. A few seconds later, Qin Weibai's reply came directly, giving him the illusion that she was waiting for his reply at any time. This time, instead of typing, Qin Weibai replied with a voice message. Li Tianlan clicked on it. Qin Weibai's cold and somewhat ethereal voice came from the phone. Tianlan, are you hurt? I'm fine. Li Tianlan typed seriously. He was still not used to speaking with a voice message, especially when chatting with Qin Weibai. Only those who had experienced the sweetness of being careful could understand it. A little injury. Pay attention to rest. Don't risk your life before you recover. Qin Weibai's voice grew softer and softer. She paused for a moment, then sent another voice message. Come home when you have time. I left some information for you at home. Take a look. It should be useful to you. Li Tianlan was slightly stunned. Oh, go back to the border now? While he was still thinking, Qin Weibai said again, the key is with old you. Li Tianlan instantly understood that the home Qin Weibai mentioned belonged to Qin Weibai, the villa where he stayed for one night. Li Tianlan became confused again. He even forgot to reply to Qin Weibai's message. He had a very strange feeling in his heart. He wanted to control himself and not let his imagination run wild, but he couldn't. Indulge in wishful thinking? That was not entirely true. Li Tianlan could feel Qin Weibai's feelings. They were emanating from her every expression and movement. But he didn't know what these feelings meant and what they represented. He had his own guesses, but every time he thought about it he felt that he was overthinking. Subconsciously, he didn't think that he was qualified to have anything with Qin Weibai now. How could a nobody who had nothing and had just started on the martial arts path make a woman like Qin Weibai fall in love with him? In terms of background, the Li family was extremely glorious 20 years ago. But now Li Tianlan's background could only bring more danger to him and the people around him. Li Tianlan didn't belittle himself, but he wouldn't be arrogant either. In general, perhaps his only redeeming quality was his potential. On the path of martial arts, he could be said to be a genius and a future expert of the invincible realm. But the other meaning of the words future expert of the invincible realm was that he was nothing now. In this way, no matter what, Qin Weibai didn't seem to have a reason to fall in love with him. Her contact information was given by his grandfather. So Li Tianlan had always thought that Qin Weibai's care for him came from her respect for his grandfather. Maybe it had something to do with his father back then. But he was never willing to think about it carefully. Time passed slowly. Li Tianlan didn't reply to Qin Weibai's message in the end. Instead, he put his phone aside and was lost in thought. Ning Qianxing pushed the door open and walked in with a pot of water in his hand. Seeing Li Tianlan in a daze, he was slightly startled and then smiled. "You're awake? How do you feel?" "I'm fine." Li Tianlan smiled. "How's Badian?" "Still sleeping. He's right next door. I've been running around. The doctor said that you're seriously injured and have to rest for a while. Try not to fight if you can. If this kind of internal injury accumulates over the years, it will become a hidden injury. It is very likely to affect a person's final achievements." Ning Qianxing poured a glass of water and handed it to Li Tianlan. He sat beside him and continued, "You were in a daze just now. What were you thinking about? Were you thinking about Lu Dongchao's death? Or Gu Yunxiao? Don't worry, the headmaster has helped you deal with these things. At least in the Sky Academy, the headmaster's prestige is enough." Li Tianlan shook his head. Since he dared to do the thing about Lu Dongchao, he wouldn't worry too much afterward. He hesitated for a moment and tried to smile naturally. He asked, "Qianxing, do you think a toad can eat swan meat without doing anything?" Ning Qianxing was slightly stunned. He gave Li Tianlan a strange look and suddenly scolded with a smile, "What kind of toad are you? A toad in the chi-controlling realm who can kill a toad at the peak of the fire-flaming realm with wind and thunder veins? If you're a toad, damn it, what are we?" "I didn't mean that." Li Tianlan shook his head with a wry smile. "I meant relative. Compared to that swan, what I have is really nothing." "You mean Wang Yuetong?" Ning Qianxing hesitated for a moment. "What you have now is really nothing compared to her. But Tianlan, listen to me. You and Wang Yuetong should leave it to fate. Don't force it. Swan meat is not so delicious. Even if you can eat it, it may not be a good thing for you." Li Tianlan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was talking about Qin Weibai, but it seemed reasonable for Ning Qianxing to talk about Wang Yuetong. But the problem was that he really didn't have any feelings for Wang Yuetong. But he was a little curious about the mysterious Wang family of Beihai that he had never heard of but everyone was very afraid of. He didn't correct Ning Qianxing at the moment and just followed his words. "What is Wang Yuetong's background?" "Princess Yuetong, the demoness of the Wang family," Ning Qianxing said in a low voice, his expression serious and solemn. Li Tianlan found the words familiar. After thinking for a while, he suddenly remembered what Li Badian said to him in the maze. It was exactly the same words. He felt a headache and said helplessly, "I mean, what is the background of the Wang family of Beihai?" "You don't know the Wang family of Beihai?" Ning Qianxing's expression was even weirder. As a member of the special warfare system, he didn't know the Wang family of Beihai. It was just like the people of Zhongzhou State didn't know who the president of Zhongzhou State was. "I don't know." Li Tianlan felt something was wrong. The Wang family of Beihai seemed to be extraordinarily famous. But he had never heard his grandfather talk about it before. He subconsciously grasped the quilt on his body, expressionless. If the Wang family of Beihai was really so famous, then it could only mean that his grandfather deliberately hid it. What did it mean? It meant that the Wang family of Beihai was probably related to his father's treason case, just like the current Kunlun city. In less than half a month after coming to Huading, Li Tianlan finally saw the fog in front of him. And behind the layers of fog was the truth that had been hidden for many years. This was not bad news for him. At least it was much better than not seeing the fog at all. "It's hard for me to answer your question." Ning Qianxing thought about it and really couldn't figure out how to answer such a ridiculous question about the background of the Wang family of Beihai. "I'll put it simply. It's a super wealthy family with no shortcomings in all aspects. It's said that it once declined, but that was hundreds of years ago. Who knows if it's true? Zhongzhou State has been founded for nearly 500 years. The Wang family of Beihai has been glorious in Zhongzhou State for nearly 500 years. Their foundation is in Beihai province, but their influence can spread to the entire Zhongzhou State and even the entire dark world. So, do you understand?" "No." Li Tianlan shook his head. Ning Qianxing's words were too empty, so empty that it was hard to have a clear concept of the Wang family of Beihai. "What do you not understand?" A sweet and charming voice suddenly sounded at the door. Li Tianlan and Ning Qianqing were shocked at the same time. Almost at the same time, Li Tianlan had already reflexively grabbed the human emperor that had been put aside. Wang Yuetong, who pushed the door open and came in, was also a little surprised. Looking at Li Tianlan, who looked like he was facing a formidable enemy, she blinked her eyes and said, "Did I come at the wrong time?" No. Li Tianlan also felt that his reaction was a little too much. He awkwardly put the weapon aside and asked, "Junior sister Yuetong, why are you here?" "I came to see you." Wang Yuetong smiled and squinted her eyes. The dimples at the corner of her mouth were very attractive. She walked into the ward and handed 2 small boxes to Li Tianlan. She said, "Senior brother, I brought you something that will be useful to you." "What is it?" Li Tianlan took it with a smile, only to find that the 2 palm-sized boxes were made of sandalwood. Not to mention the contents inside, the 2 small boxes were worth a lot of money. He glanced at Wang Yuetong in confusion and opened both boxes, only to find that there was a glassware in each box. Inside the glassware, 2 kinds of red liquid were slightly stirring, one light red, the other dark red. After you passed out, the headmaster announced that the credit system was officially launched. This bottle of light red is called Heal. I exchanged it with credits in the warehouse. The dark red one is called Life Prolonging. It's a genetic potion developed by our family. Wang Yuetong sat next to Li Tianlan and looked at him seriously. She said, "Senior brother Tianlan, I know you don't trust me enough, but I'm willing to try to trust you. I'm willing to share my good things with someone I can trust. If you take these 2 bottles of potion together, your injury will immediately stabilize and you will recover in a week. You can't refuse me. If you can't figure it out, just take it as my investment in your potential, although that's not my original intention." Heal potion. Li Tianlan knew this kind of thing. It was a special potion specially provided by Zhongzhou State for the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy. It didn't improve combat effectiveness, but it could quickly stabilize and heal injuries. In the student code of conduct, it cost 60 credits to exchange for a bottle of heal potion, and the price was clearly stated. Only the strongest group of people in the academy would exchange for a bottle of this kind of advanced thing when they went out for field missions. Some people would even be reluctant to give it up. It was a life-saving thing and no one would be so extravagant as to use it to heal injuries caused by maneuvers. As for life prolonging, just by looking at Ning Qianqing's wonderful face, he knew that the value of this medicine was absolutely not lower than that of heal. Li Tianlan held the 2 small boxes in his hands and was silent for a few seconds. Then he raised his head and looked at Wang Yuetong calmly. "Thank you." He didn't refuse. Li Tianlan had always been very clear about what kind of attitude he should use to which person. This "thank you" was not only because of the 2 precious genetic potions, but also because of Wang Yuetong's marvelous assistance at the end of the maneuver. Without her help, Lu Dongqiao would not have a good end even if he died. Wang Yuetong's pretty face blushed. She only felt that his calm eyes were unprecedentedly clear and gentle. She casually turned her head and saw the human emperor beside Li Tianlan. Her eyes slightly brightened and she grabbed the human emperor. As soon as the human emperor was in her hand, Wang Yuetong's hand suddenly sank. She exerted a little force and grabbed the human emperor again. She smiled and said, "I'm afraid it weighs more than 50 kilograms, about the same weight as the heavy sword my brother used. Senior brother Tianlan, can this weapon change shape?" "What's its name?" "It has several different forms." Li Tianlan nodded. "It's called Human Emperor." Beside Wang Yuetong, Ning Qianqing had just taken a sip of water. When he heard the word Human Emperor, he directly spat out all the water, wetting a large area of Li Tianlan's hospital bed. Chapter 30. Qin Ku once said that about 15 years ago, there was a superpower called Night Spirit in the Dark World that traveled east to Wuxia for a top-secret military blueprint. One of the 2 dominators of Night Spirit, Heaven Heart, an invincible realm expert, took action in person. Finally, he was shot dead by a patriarch of a top wealthy family in Zhongzhou State from 20,000 meters away. That gun was called the Human Emperor. It was the first of the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World. Now, listening to Wang Yuetong, Li Tianlan finally knew that the legendary Human Emperor was a murderous weapon belonging to the Wang family of Beihai. This sentence was much clearer than the large number of concepts that Ning Qianqing had just instilled in him. Invincible realm experts were the peak combat capability in the Dark World today. The birth and death of an invincible realm expert in any country could affect the pattern of the entire Dark World. Li Tianlan was not sure if there were any invincible realm experts in the Wang family of Beihai. But the blow of the human emperor 15 years ago was enough to show that they at least had the power and means to kill an invincible realm expert. Li Tianlan naturally knew the status of such a wealthy family in Zhongzhou State and in the Dark World. It's just a coincidence. My gun is a cold weapon. It can't be compared with the famous gun in your family. Li Tianlan leaned against the headboard and said with a smile, playing with the 2 sandalwood boxes in his hands. Senior brother, take the medicine first. It has been activated. If you don't take it in a few hours, it won't work. Wang Yuetong put the human emperor back in its original place and sat in front of Li Tianlan with a smile. You take it first. I have something to tell you. You've taken it? Li Tianlan felt it was a pity. He didn't have the support of a wealthy family like the Wang family of Beihai. He had planned to keep one of the 2 bottles of medicine. Maybe it could save his life someday. Hearing that it would be useless if he didn't take it in a few hours, he suddenly felt a headache. Take it. These 2 medicines complement each other. If you like, I have some life-prolonging medicine. I'll give it to you another day. There's no healing medicine. I don't have enough credits. Wang Yuetong smiled softly. It was hard for her to define her feelings for Li Tianlan. But it was certainly not love. But it was undeniable that in Wang Yuetong's eyes, Li Tianlan was indeed special and even mysterious. She couldn't help but want to get closer to him. Even if nothing happened in the end with Li Tianlan's potential, the Wang family of Beihai wouldn't care about this little investment. It was always good to have a good relationship. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment, nodded, and drank the liquid in the 2 containers together. Ning Qianqing, who was an old acquaintance of Wang Yuetong but did not seem to be close to her, finally couldn't help coughing and said awkwardly, Well, Yuetong, do you have a lot of life-prolonging potions? Ning Qing, I have medicine. Prolonging medicine, later, life-prolonging it. He was not an ignorant bumpkin like Li Tianlan. The life-prolonging medicine was far more precious than the healing medicine. It did have the effect of quickly stabilizing injuries. But the main function of life-prolonging medicine was to balance all aspects of the user's physical state. Simply put, it could coordinate the strength, speed, and explosive force of the warrior's body to make the attack more effective. At the same time, it could greatly reduce the burden on the user's body. The effect could last for up to 6 months. Even in the Wang family of Beihai, it was a very advanced thing. Life-prolonging medicine was a special product of the Wang family of Beihai. It was the 6th generation since it was first developed. So far, it was in high demand on the black market. The Wang family of Beihai only traded 100 or 200 bottles with the Zhongzhou state government every year. It was no exaggeration to say that except for young core members of the Wang family of Beihai like Wang Yuetong, almost all experts below the thundershocking realm in the entire Zhongzhou state were not qualified to use life-prolonging medicine. Now Wang Yuetong gave such a high-end thing to Li Tianlan as an ordinary healing medicine. While Ning Qianqing lamented that it was a waste of God's gift, he also had the illusion that Wang Yuetong had brought a lot of life-prolonging medicine to the Sky Academy. So he simply put down his pride and tentatively made this request. If Wang Yuetong was willing to trade, even if it was just 3 or 5 bottles, as long as she brought it back to the border Praetorian Corps, it would make the experts in the Corps safer when hunting abroad. Wang Yuetong glanced at Ning Qianqing with a faint smile on her lips. Ning Qianqing's face was a little red, but he looked at Wang Yuetong with undisguised expectation and desire. Sure, I can make the decision if it's within 20 bottles of life-prolonging medicine. She looked at Ning Qianqing's surprised expression and gently raised her red lips. She said slowly, I want 10 standard mad shots. If your marshal agrees, I'm willing to give you 20 bottles of life-prolonging medicine. The corner of Ning Qianqing's mouth twitched and he was speechless for a moment. Just as life-prolonging medicine was the private property of the Wang family of Beihai, mad shot was also the private property of their marshal, or rather, the private property of the entire Dongqing clan. The Dongqing clan was also a top wealthy family in the Zhongzhou state. It was known as a military giant and had a supreme status in the Zhongyuan province. Mad shot was the new research result of the Dongqing clan in recent years. It could also be said to be the proudest work of the Dongqing clan. Mad shot was not a medicine but a gun. To be exact, it was an energy gun that could pose a great threat to an expert in the fire-flaming realm and a certain threat to an expert in the thundershocking realm. Mad shot had a fast shooting speed and a strong energy storage capacity. Even an expert in the fire-flaming realm would be seriously injured after taking one shot. Although such a powerful energy gun was far inferior to the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World, it was still a target coveted by all the major forces. because mad shot could be mass-produced. Although each mad shot was expensive, as long as it could be mass-produced, money was nothing. At present, all the mad shots produced by the Dongqing clan had been provided to the Border Control Corps. In 3 years, there were about 60 mad shots in the hands of the real sharpshooters of the Border Control Corps, and they were secretly protected by experts. If 60 mad shots were fired at the same time, any expert under the invincible realm would feel numb. Now Wang Yuetong wanted to exchange 20 bottles of life-prolonging medicine for 10 mad shots. She was asking for too much. That's impossible. Ning Qianqing replied without hesitation. Not to mention whether such a deal was worth it. Even if it was worth it, the price of 10 mad shots was already beyond his control. See, mad shot is a treasure in your eyes, and life-prolonging is also a treasure in our eyes. There's nothing to talk about. Wang Yuetong chuckled and turned to look at Li Tianlan. Senior brother Tianlan, how do you feel? Hot. Li Tianlan said, but very comfortable. This was the first time in his life that he had taken such a high-tech genetic potion. In less than a minute after taking the potion, he felt a warm feeling, and it seemed that the pain in his body was quickly fading. This is a normal reaction, senior brother. If there are no accidents, you can be discharged tomorrow. Your injury should be healed before the class officially starts. Let's go out and play tomorrow, okay? It's time to go out. Before Li Tianlan could speak, an old voice suddenly sounded from the door. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang, stood at the door of the ward. He squinted and smiled gently. I saw that you didn't close the door, so I came in directly. Do you mind? Hello, headmaster. Li Tianlan and the other two straightened up at the same time and said in unison. Okay. Zhuang Huayang nodded and walked in slowly. From this posture, no one could associate him with the absolute expert who defeated Gu Yunxiao with one move a few hours ago. He carefully looked at Li Tianlan's face, and his eyes stopped on the 2 sandalwood boxes next to Li Tianlan. He smiled and said, It seems that there is no problem. This girl gave you a lot of private goods from the Wang family of Beihai? It's just a bottle of life-prolonging. Headmaster, your words are too harsh. Wang Yuetong curled her lips discontentedly and spoke bluntly. Headmaster, what's the matter? Sitting at the head of the bed, Li Tianlan asked straightforwardly without beating around the bush. From Zhuang Huayang's slightly flickering eyes, he could be sure that Zhuang Huayang's visit this time was definitely not as simple as a headmaster visiting an injured student. There are some things I want to talk to you alone. Zhuang Huayang smiled casually. Wang Yuetong and Ning Qianqing were not fools. Naturally, they understood that the headmaster was driving them away. They immediately got up and said goodbye. However, when Wang Yuetong left, she looked back several times. Obviously, she was very interested in the conversation between the two. This girl is smart, but she's a little too curious. Zhuang Huayang looked at Wang Yuetong, who was leaving, and said softly with a smile. Li Tianlan did not comment. He just looked at Zhuang Huayang's eyes attentively and waited for him to get to the point. But Zhuang Huayang was silent. He walked slowly to the window and looked at the endless sea outside, as if he was thinking about something. Li Tianlan was not in a hurry. Living at the border and in the maze in the desert of Beijiang had given him a calmness and patience far beyond his age. If Zhuang Huayang insisted on not talking, he could accompany the old headmaster for a day and a night. Tianlan, are you willing to be a vassal of a family or a force? To Li Tianlan's surprise, Zhuang Huayang did not talk about the entrance maneuver and Gu Yunxia. Instead, he talked about a topic that was beyond the scope of a school leader and a student's heart-to-heart talk. Li Tianlan lowered his eyelids slightly and said indifferently, I don't understand what you mean, headmaster. What I mean is very simple. With your potential, once you grow up, it will be absolutely easy for you to become a core figure of a super force. You may get a very high status and a very bright life. You can even achieve some things that you can't do on your own. But you will also lose yourself. You will not have a standpoint. The standpoint of that big force is your standpoint. You will not care about what you want, but how to get the most benefits for that force. Your hatred, your resentment, your love, all have to be weighed in the overall situation. You can't be happy with gratitude or hatred. You can only become a bright and glorious pawn in the hands of others, but without freedom and standpoint. Are you willing to live such a life? Zhuang Huayang turned around and looked at Li Tianlan with bright eyes. His expression was still gentle, but the content of his words was full of a sense of oppression. This time, Li Tianlan was silent for a full 5 minutes before he calmly said, My grandfather once told me that I would rather be a farmer than a vassal. Penetrating insight. Zhuang Huayang nodded with a smile. He thought for a while and continued, If you have a friend who has a very good relationship with you, and the two of you build a very large force together, and it has been passed on smoothly for hundreds of years or even longer, generation after generation of people run this force, but the highest authority has always been in the hands of you and your friend's descendants. Can you understand what I'm saying? I can understand. Li Tianlan's tone was calm, but his heart was turbulent. By now he could already be sure that Zhuang Huayang did not come to him for a chat at all. Perhaps Zhuang Huayang already knew his identity, and today, it was obvious that he wanted to tell him something. It's good that you can understand. Zhuang Huayang took out a cigarette and lit it. He took a deep breath and continued, for hundreds of years, you and your friend's descendants have been in control of the supreme power of this force. But suddenly one day something happened to your friend's descendants, and a martial arts force with great influence collapsed just like that. But your descendant also encountered some problems, so he couldn't help you. The final result is clear. Your friend's descendant completely fell into desolation, but your descendant succeeded in controlling the supreme power of this superpower alone. Tianlan, if it were you, would you feel guilty? Maybe. Li Tianlan lowered his head and drank water, hiding all his expressions. His tone was gentle, but there was a trace of indifference. But such guilt can't affect anything at all. Yes, it won't affect anything at all. Zhuang Huayang nodded and echoed meaningfully. He continued, maybe we can put it more simply. We don't need to talk about descendants. Let's talk about you. If you control the supreme power of this big force and one day you suddenly find that your once closest and most reliable comrade, but suddenly desolate, has a tendency to rise again, then what will you do? Li Tianlan was silent. Will you do your best to help him restore his former status and share the power in his hands with you? Zhuang Huayang's eyes became sharper and sharper, and the questions he asked became more and more difficult to answer. If it's my friend, I will. Li Tianlan opened his mouth slowly. He had always been calm, but this time his tone became depressed and bitter. But it's your ancestor's friend. This friendship has lasted for hundreds of years and has been passed down from generation to generation. How much of it can be left in your generation? Is it the same as before, or is it simply a need for cooperation? Now the other family has fallen, and you alone control the situation. Under such circumstances, in the face of the rise of another family, what will you choose? Zhuang Huayang asked in an indifferent and even a little leisurely. But the answer behind this question was cold and chilling. Li Tianlan remained silent. He had nothing to say. I'll answer it for you. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes and said with a slightly cold smile, if it were me, I would never want to see the rise of another family, because helping them is tantamount to helping another person share his own power. If I don't help them, if they really become powerful, it is very likely to lead to the division of the force I control now. So not only will I not help them, but I will also do everything possible to stop their development. If I'm ruthless, I will even use my current power to completely crush them and make them disappear completely. Li Tianlan's hand shook slightly, and in his hand, more than half a cup of water suddenly shook a little. So if this once desolate force wants to stand in its former position again, then not to mention their enemies, even their best partners will become their most direct opponents, even their mortal enemies. Zhuang Huayang said coldly. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and poured all the water in the cup down. Then he said, it's a wonderful story. Just a story? Tianlan? What if it's true? Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan and asked with mocking eyes. Li Tianlan was also looking at Zhuang Huayang, and his eyes were absolutely quiet like stagnant water. How many invincible realm experts are there in Zhongzhou state now? Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan's eyes and asked. Li Tianlan's eyes flickered slightly and he asked in reply, not 4? Of course not. Zhuang Huayang laughed out loud and said, to be exact, there should be 5 invincible realm experts in Zhongzhou state now, but one has been forgotten by most people. Chapter 31. Here it came. Finally it came. From the beginning of the entrance maneuver, Li Tianlan had guessed that Zhuang Huayang knew his identity. Now that he heard Zhuang Huayang directly call out his grandfather's name, he basically had a definite answer in his heart. His heart was beating fiercely, but his expression did not change at all. He was like a rock, cold and indifferent. I'd like to hear the details. He raised his head and calmly looked into Zhuang Huayang's eyes. Zhuang Huayang subconsciously narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Tianlan seriously for a while. Then he suddenly said, Tianlan, do you know that your current performance may be appreciated, but it's hard for people to like you? You're too quiet, so quiet that no one can see through you. If you already have a foundation, your performance would be good. but now you're just a young man with nothing. A young man that even an old man like me thinks is deep and even unfathomable is a bit too much. You should show your vigor and vitality at least to let people know what you're thinking, even if what they see is not what you really want to show. Li Tianlan's mouth moved. He sat on the bed and bowed slightly. He said calmly, "Thank you for your advice, headmaster." Zhuang Huayang could not tell whether Li Tianlan had listened to him or not. This young man, he really had a feeling that he could not grasp. Shaking his head, he pulled a chair to sit on the edge of the bed and took out a cigarette again. "Want one?" Li Tianlan nodded and took the cigarette. He knew how to smoke, but he only smoked cheap tobacco at the border, so he was not addicted to it. "This is a luxury in your country, isn't it?" Zhuang Huayang shook the cigarette in his hand and asked with a smile. But in his eyes, Li Tianlan seemed not to have heard it. His expression did not change at all, and he just smoked quietly. The old headmaster laughed at himself. Regardless of whether Li Tianlan listened or not, he went straight to the point. The Li family represented by Li Honghe was not called the Li family before. Different from the Wang family of Beihai, they are a martial arts force with a long history, called Xuanyuantai of Kunlun. 20 years ago, Xuanyuantai was truly glorious. Over the past 500 years, from Li Kuangtu's generation, Xuanyuantai produced 9 generations of invincible realm experts without interruption. Only the Wang family of Beihai could match this kind of glory. And because Xuanyuantai has been controlled by the Li family in recent generations, the Li family is also known as the war god family of Zhongzhou State. To put it simply, in the past few hundred years, every invincible realm expert from Xuanyuantai of Kunlun has been the supreme leader of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Their status is similar to that of the current Kunlun city, but their prestige is higher than that of Kunlun city. What do you think? Awesome, right? Li Tianlan was no longer calm this time. The muscles on his face twitched visibly, and he took a deep drag on the cigarette. 20 years ago, the Southeast Group, which was formed by the Wang family of Beihai and Xuanyuantai of Kunlun, had an overwhelming influence in Zhongzhou State. Southeast Group. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows in surprise. What is it? You can understand it as a force composed of various forces. Zhuang Huayang explained patiently, these forces include all the forces in politics, economy, military system, special warfare system, academic field, public opinion, and so on. In a word, the Southeast Group is a super force composed of all the powerful families in the southeast of Zhongzhou State. Wuxia Province, Jiangxi Province, Minnan Province, Jianghuai Province, Dongshan Province, Jiangnan Province, and Beihai Province, as well as some powerful departments in the capital Yuzhou, can all be regarded as the sphere of influence of the Southeast Group. Zhuang Huayang took a deep drag on the cigarette. Obviously he was not calm. Including the place we are in now. The entire Huading 5 years ago was also the backyard of the Southeast Group. Li Tianlan was speechless for a long time. Even he could not help but feel a little numb when he heard this. He could not imagine the power of this force. But as soon as he heard the names of the 7 provinces, he could feel what kind of turbulence this force would set off in Zhongzhou State. With the decline of Xuanyuantai of Kunlun or the Li family, this force had now been completely dominated by the Wang family of Beihai. It was the first time that Li Tianlan knew that his family had been so glorious when he stood side by side with the Wang family of Beihai. But when he heard the news at this time, he was not honored, only bitter. Very strong. Li Tianlan opened his mouth and his voice was very dry. It's more than very strong. 20 years ago the Southeast Group was in power. If it weren't for that case of treason, the Southeast Group would be even more horrible now. How could there be room for others to live? Zhuang Huayang smoked and said calmly. Looking at Li Tianlan, who was in deep thought, he suddenly asked, "What do you think of your father's treason case?" This sentence was tantamount to directly revealing Li Tianlan's identity. There was no if, and no story. In other words, Zhuang Huayang's words directly involved Li Tianlan in this story. You said it was my father. From my standpoint, what opinion can I have? Will I really think that he committed treason like others? Li Tianlan didn't look surprised at all. He just stared at Zhuang Huayang coldly and asked. Zhuang Huayang smiled slightly and said in a calm tone, I understand that you have resentment, but don't vent it on me. In fact, my old leader and I have been insisting on investigating the truth of that treason case all these years. If it weren't for our insistence, the case would have been completely closed now. What level was Zhuang Huayang's old leader? Li Tianlan still couldn't imagine, but there was no doubt that this was the topic of his talk today. Li Tianlan looked at Zhuang Huayang thoughtfully, narrowed his eyes and said softly, So what's the background of the headmaster? Or which group does he come from? Shall we continue to tell the story? Zhuang Huayang didn't answer directly, but looked at Li Tianlan and said with a smile. Li Tianlan nodded and said, "Okay. It may be difficult for you to understand how powerful the Southeast group was 20 years ago. Judging from the situation of Zhongzhou State, whichever group is in power will become extremely powerful during the period of the group's rule. But now, it has been nearly 20 years since the Southeast group was in power, but it is still one of the most powerful groups in Zhongzhou State. Even if it has left the highest position, even if it has been affected by the treason case, it hasn't been completely defeated. This shows their tenacity and the great talent of the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai." Zhuang Huayang said slowly, "But overall, the strength of the Southeast group has been weakened in recent years, but now it has completely stabilized. More than 10 years ago, the big boss of the Southeast group retired, and Zhongzhou State was under the rule of the Prince Group. Judging from the situation at that time, if the Wang family of Beihai and Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun were at their peak, even if the Prince Group came to power, it couldn't escape the fate of being a puppet. Fortunately, Zhuanyuantai was already a thing of the past at that time. A few years passed and the storm caused by the treason case also came to an end. Zhongzhou State has Kunlun City. After the Prince Group came to power, it maintained a good relationship with Kunlun City. Today, the Prince Group has stabilized its advantages and has become a behemoth that can stand at the same height as the Southeast Group. So, Li Tianlan already had a guess in his heart, but he still couldn't help asking. That's why the next topic is sensitive. Even to you I can't tell you. Whatever you think is the situation, it's probably the situation. Zhuang Huayang said with a smile. His words were extremely obvious. Unless Li Tianlan was a fool, he would definitely understand what he meant. Li Tianlan didn't say anything. Zhuang Huayang's words were extremely obvious, especially the word puppet, which was an obvious hint. Many years ago, the powerful Southeast Group and the rising Prince Group must have had a lot of conflicts. Especially for the Prince Group, being a puppet was absolutely not something they wanted to see. Under such circumstances, it was completely reasonable for the Prince Group to counterattack in advance in the later period of the Southeast Group's rule. And judging from the result, the Prince Group undoubtedly put the breakthrough point of the counterattack on the original Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. Everything Zhuang Huayang said was almost equivalent to telling him clearly that his father's treason case was probably the counterattack made by the Prince Group because it was unwilling to be a puppet, and now Kunlun City played the role of an accomplice. Li Tianlan closed his eyes and suddenly felt a little tired. If all this was true, then if he wanted to investigate the treason case and let the Li family reappear in the power circle of Zhongzhou State, he had to face not only the Wang family of Beihai, but also the Prince Group in Kunlun City. He took a deep breath, as if there were 3 invisible mountains pressing on him, making it difficult for him to breathe. If that's the case, why didn't they investigate it? Li Tianlan was silent for a long time before he asked again. If his father's treason case was framed by the Prince Group in Kunlun City, then they should have been able to find out something when there were still a lot of clues. Until now, he was afraid that many clues had been cut off. Who will investigate it? Zhuang Huayang said meaningfully, Tianlan, don't you know why your grandfather hasn't left the border so far? My old leader has invited your grandfather in person more than once. Li Tianlan immediately thought of Yi Dongxing, who had gone to the border to invite his grandfather back to Yuzhou not long ago. But obviously Yi Dongxing and Zhuang Huayang were not on the same side, because Li Honghe had made it clear that the reason why Yi Dongxing was willing to reverse the verdict for his son and invite him back to the capital was that Yi Dongxing didn't know he had a grandson. But now Zhuang Huayang obviously didn't mind his existence. Li Tianlan thought for a while and smiled bitterly again. Why didn't his grandfather leave the border? There was no doubt that if they left, not only Kunlun City and the Prince Group would target them crazily, but even the Wang family of Beihai would never welcome their return. The old leader behind Zhuang Huayang definitely belonged to another group. He might not be so pure when he invited people. Just as Zhuang Huayang couldn't take the initiative to tell him these things when he saw them living a difficult life, he said these things today and invited people with his old leader with the purpose of using the Li family. Such a situation was indeed more dangerous for the Li family than staying at the border. In this situation, the Wang family of Beihai, the Prince Group and Kunlun City were all standing opposite the Li family. The Li family had declined. None of the 3 forces would be interested in investigating the details of the treason case because they all got what they wanted. Li Tianlan quickly calmed down. He was different from his grandfather. In Huading he was alone. If he could get what he wanted, he didn't mind being used. In the face of Zhuang Huayang's hint, He narrowed his eyes and said straightforwardly, "What do you need me to do?" "Join us." Zhuang Huayang was straightforward and said with a smile. "I don't even know who you are. How can I join you?" Li Tianlan laughed softly, looking calm and composed. "Let me briefly introduce the current situation of Zhongzhou State to you." Zhuang Huayang stood up and handed Li Tianlan another cigarette. "There are 6 groups in Zhongzhou State now: the Southeast Group, the Prince Group, and the Special Warfare Group represented by Kunlun City. In addition, there is the Giant Group of Zhongzhou State represented by the Dongqing clan, the North Group based in Northern City, and the last one is us. Because many of us have the background of Zhongzhou State College, we are jokingly called the Academics and are the current ruling group. The Southeast Group, the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, the Giant Group, the North Group, and the Academics." Li Tianlan quickly sorted out his thoughts and said calmly, "Why did you choose me?" "Our initial choice was your grandfather." Zhuang Huayang smiled helplessly and said, "Even now he is our best choice. But obviously he doesn't have much interest in it. So we chose you. You have the wind and thunder veins. As long as you don't slack off, you can steadily enter the invincible realm when you grow up. This potential is worth our investment. At present we have little say in the special warfare system, very little. I'm the only expert in the academics who can control the situation, but my state is also declining and I can't hold on for long. As for the experts of the younger generation, Qin Ku is okay, but she probably can't enter the invincible realm. So, we chose you in the hope that you can help us get back the say in the special warfare system after entering the invincible realm." Li Tianlan took a big drag on the cigarette. When the cigarette was about to burn out, he looked up at Zhuang Huayang seriously and said, "Is this the idea of the whole academics?" "I talked to the chief on the phone," Zhuang Huayang said in a calm tone. The academics was now the ruling group of Zhongzhou State. It was self-evident who the chief Zhuang Huayang was talking about was. "How much time do I have?" Li Tianlan asked again. This question was very critical for him. 10 years. Zhuang Huayang said in a dignified tone, "The chief will probably retire in 1 term. Within 10 years, the strength of the academics will be at its strongest. After this period, the situation will be a little difficult, which means that our plan will fail." A 10-year plan. Li Tianlan exhaled a mouthful of smoke, got out of bed and came to the window. In his sight, the endless sea was whistling up and down, and the tide rose and fell, never stopping. Li Tianlan clenched his fist and said without looking back, "Then what can I get?" "Freedom." "Freedom? Freedom." Zhuang Huayang said seriously, "You will not be our vassal. Within 10 years, if you can enter the invincible realm, you will be the most trustworthy ally of the academics. Within 10 years, as long as your performance satisfies us, our help to you will certainly satisfy you. This condition is really unbelievably loose." Li Tianlan looked at the sea and laughed. Zhuang Huayang wanted to say something but stopped on second thought and finally said, "There are some other reasons but I can't say it now. You will know sooner or later." "It seems that I have no reason to refuse." Li Tianlan turned around and looked at Zhuang Huayang. "If that's the case." Zhuang Huayang smiled and reached out his hand. "Comrade Li Tianlan, we will be on the same side from now on. Comrade, not classmate." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly, reached out his hand and held it tightly with Zhuang Huayang. "Tell me about a more coincidental thing." Zhuang Huayang suddenly laughed and said, "In the past 2 decades, every 5 years, there will be a major event in Zhongzhou State. 20 years ago, your father committed treason, and the old patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai died of illness. 15 years ago, the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai killed Tianling, an invincible realm expert of Tianling, with the murderous weapon Human Emperor. 10 years ago, Situ Cangyue, one of the 4 gods of Zhongzhou State, killed Lu Tianqin, an invincible realm expert of Zhongzhou State. 5 years ago, Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, successfully entered the invincible realm, and Huading was also snatched from the Wang family of Beihai by the Prince Group. Now, another 5 years is about to pass. Who knows what will happen? We can forget about these 5 years, but I hope that in the next 10 years, every major event we hear will be related to you." He let go of Li Tianlan's hand, patted him on the shoulder and went straight to the door. "Have a good rest, I'm leaving." Li Tianlan looked at Zhuang Huayang's back. When Zhuang Huayang was about to go out, he suddenly said, "Who is the patriarch of this generation of the Wang family of Beihai?" Zhuang Huayang's figure paused slightly and said calmly, "It's Wang Yuedong's father, the Lord of Human Emperor, Wang Tianzong." Chapter 32. After Zhuang Huayang left, Li Tianlan faced the sea alone and stood in front of the window for a long time, as if he had become a statue. For the first time since he left the border, he knew his future situation. The southeast group led by the Wang family of Beihai. The Prince group which had just given up its highest power. In Kunlun City, the power center of the Special Warfare Group. One day in the future, these super forces in the central province that could turn clouds and rain with a flip of their hands would become his enemies. The news couldn't be any worse. But for Li Tianlan, who knew nothing, what Zhuang Huayang said was at least a gain. At least he knew the starting point for investigating his father's treason case when he had the capital one day. The biggest gain was naturally Zhuang Huayang's invitation. In the current situation, he could not refuse the olive branch extended by the academics. Otherwise, Zhuang Huayang didn't need to do anything. He just needed to reveal his identity, and he would die without a burial place. Temporarily joining the academics and becoming their ally in the future was Li Tianlan's only choice at present, and it was also a choice that would help him a lot. However, how long this kind of cooperation could last depended on his own growth and the specific attitude of the academics. Variables could happen at any time. After all, in any case, the academics was now the ruling group of Zhongzhou state, and there were many people who wanted to rely on it. Zhuang Huayang said it was pitiful, but Li Tianlan would not believe that the other party would put all the chips of the 10-year plan on him unless he was a fool. That was to say, before he could surpass other competitors and let the academics put all the chips on him, even if he could get the help of the academics, it would not be too much. After all, Zhuang Huayang just said that the help of the academics would satisfy him. Satisfaction and surprise were two completely different concepts. However, Li Tianlan did not bother to care about this. Compared with the resources that the academics was about to pour into him, Zhuang Huayang's willingness to temporarily keep the secret about his identity for him was the greatest help to him. Thinking of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan sobered up in an instant. His statue-like body finally moved and he breathed a long sigh of relief. Then he laughed at himself. For him, these problems really needed to be considered. If his strength was really at the peak, then the invincibility of the #1 expert in Zhongzhou state, the terror of the human emperor, the insidiousness of the Prince group, and the strength of Kunlun City would be very close to him. But now, he was just a freshman of the Sky Academy who had just entered the Qi-controlling realm. The most important thing was to take care of what was in front of him. At present, his most important task was to get as many credits as possible from the Sky Academy. In the next 3 years he must keep his credit advantage and expand it. Then there was the annual maneuver of the two academies. The first maneuver of this year would begin in March next year. It was said to be a very cruel scene. In every maneuver the elites of the two academies would bleed on the spot. But because such maneuvers were extremely rich in credits, Li Tianlan had to participate in such maneuvers if he wanted to keep ahead in credits. There was still about a year to go. Li Tianlan thought silently. In a year, under normal circumstances he could probably recover to the level of the ice-condensing realm and would not be too far from the fire-flaming realm. This progress might not satisfy the academics, but combined with his real combat capability, it should not be difficult to get a good ranking in the maneuver. This was the guarantee for the academics to continue to bet on him. At present, Li Tianlan's goal was very clear. That was to get a good ranking in the maneuver of the two academies a year later and then earn as many credits as possible. In the next 3 years, as long as he could restore his peak strength, the academics would have no second choice except for him. Tianlan, what are you thinking about? You didn't even hear me knocking on the door. A voice suddenly sounded from behind Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan turned around abruptly. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing appeared at the door of the ward together and looked at him at the same time. I'm thinking. Li Tianlan hesitated a little. How can I get a good ranking in the maneuver of the two academies next year? It's better to get the first place or at least the top 3. If he could get the top 3 in the maneuver of the two academies, his 2 roommates would definitely be people he could not avoid. The top 10 experts of the younger generation were ranked every year. Although the rankings were exaggerated, as long as they were on the list, no matter how exaggerated they were, it could still show how terrifying their potential was. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing ranked 4th and 5th respectively. To put it bluntly, they could all be regarded as Li Tianlan's competitors. However, there were many ways to compete. Some were benign while others were irreconcilable. Li Tianlan admired these 2 roommates from the bottom of his heart and did not want to have a bad relationship with them. Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian were stunned at the same time. What's there to think about? Improving my strength is the most important thing. Tianlan, when the time comes, as long as you have the strength, just close your eyes and rush forward. I'll do my best to clear the obstacles for you. If we meet, I'll go easy on you. Li Baidian said with a smile. Me too. I'm not strong enough to fight for the top 5. Tianlan, if you have the strength, I won't stand in your way. Ning Qianqing's attitude was equally clear. As for whether he really thought so, no one knew. You. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and looked at the two suspiciously. He was not stupid. If he was a little confused when the three of them met for the first time, then he had to be suspicious of some clues in the maneuver. The kindness of these two people towards him seemed to be a little too much. What? I don't want to make it too clear. Damn it, you have to force me. Li Baidian rolled his eyes and said grumpily, I mean the same thing as Qianqing. I have no confidence in making it to the top 3. We are brothers in the same dormitory. If you have enough strength, who would want to stand in your way? The great void sword of Mount Shu is indeed strong, but in terms of martial arts, it is a real unique skill in the late stage. At least before the thunder-shocking realm, I'm definitely no match for Dongqing Rushi, the genius disciple of Jade Pool. As for Jiang Shangyu, who is ranked higher than Dongqing Rushi, I'm even weaker. But if I enter the thunder-shocking realm, then it'll be different. Li Tianlan was no longer a noob who knew nothing when he first entered the world. At least he had some understanding of the top 10 young experts. Yu Qingyan once said that Dongqing Rushi was a genius who ranked ahead of Li Baidian among the top 10 young experts. She ranked 3rd. At the age of 19, she was already an expert of the fire-flaming realm. Jiang Shangyu ranked 2nd. It was said that both of them were geniuses with exquisite bones and their learning abilities were unparalleled in the world. But Li Tianlan didn't take it to heart. Wind and thunder veins, heavenly king heart, and exquisite bones were definitely the best congenital conditions for people who practiced martial arts. But congenital conditions were not omnipotent. At least Li Tianlan knew that the #1 expert in Heng State many years ago was a peerless genius who possessed both the heavenly king heart and the exquisite bone. But after he successfully stepped into the invincible realm, he was also killed by his grandfather. The red sandalwood plaque with the words, Li family, on it in the border camp was his grandfather's trophy after that fierce battle. And his grandfather, Li Honghe, was just an ordinary person in terms of physique. But Li Baidian had such a high opinion of these two people, so Li Tianlan had to pay attention to them. In the maze, Li Baidian's unification of thousands of swords against Lu Dongyu had majestic sword intent, but the sword energy was illusory. Its power had already surpassed the ice-condensing realm. Li Baidian believed that in his current state, if he took that sword head-on, even if he was lucky, he would at least be seriously injured. Such combat strength was absolutely rare in the younger generation, but he admitted that he was no match for Dongqing Rushi and Jiang Shangyu. No matter how arrogant Li Tianlan was, he wouldn't ignore this fact. But he still had some doubts and asked subconsciously, is what you said true? Damn you, is it a glorious thing to admit that you can't beat others? Li Baidian said angrily. This was indeed a reason. Li Tianlan laughed and didn't take it seriously. He asked casually, who has a cigarette? Ning Qianqing fumbled in his pocket, took out half a pack of Chunghua cigarettes and threw them to Li Tianlan. He said regretfully, I'm almost out of stock. If I want to smoke again in the future, I have to exchange credits. Save some for me. Li Tianlan smiled, took out a cigarette, lit it and threw it back. Each of the three of them smoked. Li Baidian had just woken up from a coma, and he had internal injuries. He coughed violently after a few puffs. He put out the cigarette helplessly and sighed. This maneuver is a failure for me. The ranking is okay, but I didn't do anything in the end. Is this a victory without doing anything? Tianlan's performance was brilliant. F***CK, you killed Lu Xiaowei, the old bastard. By the way, Tianlan, how did you kill Lu Xiaowei? What's the matter with your realm? Li Baidian had wanted to ask this question several times during the maneuver. Now that he finally found the opportunity, he was completely unyielding. It was really a fluke. Li Tianlan thought for a moment and said seriously, my weapon was probably a little beyond his expectation. In addition, in a place where no one can see, my movement technique is much more agile than his. If we were to fight head-on, the result would be hard to say. However, that old fellow wanted to trick me, and in the end I tricked him. He deserves to die. Facing Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing, Li Tianlan was completely telling the truth. The complexity of the human emperor was definitely beyond Lu Xiaowei's imagination. In addition, his body movement greatly restrained the martial arts of the Lu family, so the more Lu Xiaowei fought, the more impatient he became. Moreover, he thought himself clever. If he hadn't wanted to use the two trees to block the attack route of the human emperor, Li Tianlan wouldn't have beaten him at his own game. The human emperor instantly turned into two swords and directly cut off one of Lu Xiaowei's arms. From that moment on, Lu Xiaowei's fate was sealed. The martial arts of the Lu family is indeed not flexible enough. This is a well-known fact. Ning Qianqing nodded. The defeat of Lu Tianqing 10 years ago directly exposed the shortcomings of the martial arts of the Lu family. This was also something that many people found strange. After all, Lu Tianqing was an expert of the invincible realm. It shouldn't be difficult for him to create a set of body movement. Even if the body movement was ordinary, it could slightly make up for the shortcomings of the unique skills of the Lu family. But the problem was that he didn't have any unique skills of body movement worth mentioning until his death. No. Li Beidian suddenly said, it's true that the unique skills of the Lu family are flawed, but not all body movements can restrain them. Moreover, the gap between you and Lu Xiaowei is too big. So, to restrain them, only the top body movement in the dark world can do it. Tianlan, what body movement did you use? I call it Qingfeng. Li Tianlan said calmly, as for the top you mentioned, it shouldn't be counted, right? Qingfeng? It was indeed a name that no one had heard of. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other. After a moment of silence, Li Beidian said, Tianlan, do you mind if I try this set of body movement with you? Li Tianlan was stunned and wanted to say that it was not necessary. But seeing Li Beidian's serious expression, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Sure. Ning Qianqing didn't say anything but stood up and moved aside. He had heard rumors about the Great Void Sword of Mount Shu. The unique skills of the Great Void Sword had a total of 3 moves, but the third move was the perfect combination of sword and body movement. Its power could be said to be endless. Li Beidian certainly couldn't grasp the essence of the third move, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to know a little about it. Then I'm coming. Li Beidian stood up and said with a smile. His eyes were excited and he was eager to try. Come on. Li Tianlan nodded casually. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Beidian had already taken a step forward. In an instant, the sword intent in the ward surged. The whole ward seemed to disappear in an instant. Li Tianlan seemed to be in the void. His whole body was surrounded by sword energy, but at the same time, it was as if nothing existed. Only an endless breath of danger was erupting. The moment his mind was attracted by the endless sword intent, Li Beidian directly rushed forward and leaped over the distance of 7 or 8 meters. He punched directly at Li Tianlan's chest with his bare hands. There was a slight flash of lightning at the door of the ward. Qin Ku, who happened to be in the hospital and was alarmed by the great void sword intent, appeared directly at the door. At the same time, almost out of instinct, Li Tianlan moved slightly to the left and retreated at the same time. His body seemed to be weightless. Rather than saying he was moving, it would be better to say that he was floating. In a very small area, countless Li Tianlans appeared in an instant. Ning Qianqing, who was watching from the side, suddenly felt dizzy, but he didn't dare to relax his eyes at all. But in the next second, his pupils suddenly contracted to the extreme. In Li Tianlan's sight, all the afterimages were disappearing. Somehow, Li Tianlan's retreating body appeared behind Li Beidian and grabbed him by the neck. Such a body movement completely deceived everyone's eyes in an instant. The whole ward suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Li Beidian, who was already injured, bled again from the corner of his mouth. But he didn't notice it at all. He just exclaimed in disbelief, "How is this possible?" Ning Qianqing's shock was no less than Li Beidian's. He opened his mouth and was about to speak when Qin Ku, who was at the door, directly spoke. Chapter 33. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly sank. Situ Tsangyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State. This was the second time he had heard the name today. The first time was from Zhuang Huayang's mouth. Not long ago he told Li Tianlan that 10 years ago Situ Tsangyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, killed Lu Tianqing, an expert of the invincible realm. It could be seen that Situ Tsangyue was definitely one of the 4 experts of the invincible realm in Zhongzhou State, and she was an extraordinary one. But Li Tianlan really had nothing to do with him, even this name. Even this name he had never heard of it before today. The body movement he used was given to him by his grandfather. After he slightly modified it, it became what it was now. It was called Qingfeng. But now, Qin Ku suddenly appeared here and told him that this body movement was called Desperate Chase. What the hell was going on? In the twinkling of an eye, countless thoughts turned in Li Tianlan's mind. Could it be that this movement technique had really spread to the outside world and become the so-called Desperate Chase? Or were they actually 2 sets of body movement but in fact they were somewhat similar? If this kind of unique skill was really similar, it was actually very troublesome, and it might even arouse the hostility of Situ Tsangyue, an expert of the invincible realm. But if the two sets of body movement were really homologous, then what was Situ Tsangyue's current position? Li Tianlan was a little confused, but he knew that he could not lose his composure now. He let go of Li Beidian, nodded to Qin Ku, and did not answer her question. He just whispered, "Hello, Miss Qin." "Hello." Qin Ku's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. In Li Tianlan's impression, Qin Ku seemed to be cold and inhuman all the time. It could be said that she was an iceberg beauty. But at this moment, Qin Ku almost subverted Li Tianlan's impression. Her expression was still cold, but there was a kind of curious and extremely fiery light in her eyes. "Tianlan, how is Governor?" Qin Ku suddenly asked. "Governor? What governor?" Li Tianlan had a headache and made up his mind to catch up on relevant information. At the very least, he had to figure out the basic pattern of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. The so-called city lord was most likely related to Situ Tsangyue. At this point he didn't know whether to deny it or to admit it. He just felt that something was wrong no matter what he said. At the moment, he could only bite the bullet and vaguely say, "The city lord has always been in good health." "That's good." Qin Ku smiled, which was very rare. The worship in her eyes flashed and then disappeared. Then it became a little regretful. "I could have visited the city governor in person a few days ago. What a pity." Seeing that the cold beauty in front of him was most likely a fan of the governor, Li Tianlan dared not say more. He felt like an idiot. Now he was not even sure whether the governor was Situ Tsangyue or not. If Qin Ku wanted to gossip, he might make a fool of himself. So he glanced at Qin Ku and asked directly, "Teacher Qin, do you have anything else to say?" "Nothing." Qin Ku, who was in a trance, suddenly realized that she had lost her composure. She took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said softly, "It turns out that you are the disciple of Governor Situ. No wonder, no wonder." She said, "No wonder" twice and continued, "If you have a chance, say hello to the city lord for me. If you have anything in the future, you can also come to the teaching office to find me." There was no doubt that Li Tianlan's identity as the disciple of the city lord worked. Li Tianlan nodded subconsciously. Looking at her back as she left, he made up his mind to stay as far away from this woman as possible in the future. When Qin Ku was far away, Li Beidian directly rushed over without wiping the blood on the corner of his mouth. He said with his eyes shining, "Well done, Tianlan. It turns out that you are the most mysterious one. Tut, I have never heard that Governor Situ has accepted a disciple, and he is a man. Your status is not low." "A man?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. "So, Situ Tsangyue is the city lord? A woman?" The sharpness of this sentence was no less than a sharp sword. In an instant Li Beidian was stunned. "What do you mean?" He was stunned for 2 seconds before he spoke subconsciously. Ning Qianqing was not surprised. A person who did not know the origin of the Wang family of Beihai and seemed to be unfamiliar with the special warfare system was too unlikely to be Situ Tsangyue's disciple. But the body movement that Li Tianlan had just used was indeed Situ Tsangyue's famous unique skill. In recent years, it even had the reputation of being the first body movement in the dark world. It was impeccable and unpredictable when it moved in a small range and chased in a large range. Once he mastered such a body movement, he would almost be invincible in the face of any opponent in the same realm. It was Situ Tsangyue's secret. How did Li Tianlan learn it? "I don't know Situ Tsangyue," Li Tianlan said calmly. Li Beidian, who was stunned, finally came to his senses. The muscles on his face suddenly twitched. "You mean you have nothing to do with the hidden god at all? Then how did you learn this body movement?" "This is her unique skill. She won't teach it to anyone except her last disciple." Li Tianlan felt a little helpless. It was really hard for him to answer this question because it involved his identity. He was willing to trust Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian, but the identity he was hiding now was too sensitive. It would not do either side any good if he told them. So he shook his head and said, "It's a long story. Let's talk about the hidden god of Zhongzhou State first." "The hidden god of Zhongzhou State, Situ Tsangyue. What's there to say?" Li Beidian was shocked and flustered. Ning Qianqing sneered and shook his head. "The hidden god, Situ Tsangyue, is one of the 4 gods of Zhongzhou State. Among the 4 invincible realm experts of Zhongzhou State, she is the only woman. But she is strong and even a little crazy. This person doesn't follow the rules. Very few people dare to provoke her." 4 gods of Zhongzhou State? Are they the 4 invincible realm experts? Li Tianlan asked curiously. This was something that everyone in the special warfare system should know, but he didn't. He could only ask whatever he wanted in front of Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian. If it was on other occasions, given his cautious character, he wouldn't ask directly even if he didn't know. No. Ning Qianqing shook his head. Among the 4 gods, the first is the god of war of Zhongzhou State, governor of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun. The second is the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, governor of Sai City, Situ Tsanyue. The third is the commander of our border Praetorian Corps, Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Zhongzhou State. The last is the deputy minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, god of war Yi Dongxing. God of war Yi Dongxing. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth moved. He took a deep breath and suppressed all his emotions. Among the 4 gods of Zhongzhou State, 3 of them have public offices. Only Situ Tsanyue and her Sai City are different. They belong to a semi-official organization, the so-called Special Warfare Giants or Dark Giants. It is said that Situ Tsanyue also graduated from the Sky Academy many years ago and was one of the first few students. Sai City is the organization she founded after graduation. Nowadays, the strongest killers and assassins in Zhongzhou State are almost all gathered in Sai City. In addition, Situ Tsanyue holds the setting sun, one of the 12 murderous weapons of Zhongzhou State. Even in the whole dark world, they are also a pivotal force. Among the graduates of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy, Situ Tsanyue can be said to be the most accomplished dark giant. Li Tianlan rubbed his cheek hard, took a deep breath and suddenly said, "What about Wang Qianzong, the top expert of Zhongzhou State? Why isn't he on the list of the 4 gods?" Ning Qianqing was obviously stunned, and then he said with a wry smile, "How do I know? People like him probably disdained this kind of ranking a long time ago, right?" Li Tianlan sat on the bed again and was in a daze. Qingfeng desperate chase. Were these 2 kinds of movement techniques from the same source? If they were, what was the relationship between the current Sai City and Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun? What was Situ Tsanyue's attitude toward the Li family now? For Li Tianlan, behind this question was likely to be a tiger skin that could give him great protection, but it could also be a talisman that hastened his death. Before figuring this out, this set of body techniques could not be shown to others. With the agreement between him and Zhuang Huayang, he did not have to worry that Qin Ku would leak anything. Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian were also trustworthy. But at present, the feeling that he could only go with the flow in the general trend and be powerless to do anything made him extremely uncomfortable and unwilling. The turbulent situation between the 6 groups of Zhongzhou State and the maneuvering of the Invincible Realm experts seemed to be something he could only watch. The only thing he could do now was to restore his strength and earn points in the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan suddenly smiled. His smile was bitter, but it contained a kind of forbearance to the bones. "No matter how unwilling I am, what can I do?" he suddenly said in a low voice. His light tone seemed to be filled with endless distance. "What?" Ning Qianqing and Li Beidian looked at each other. "Nothing, I'm a little tired." Li Tianlan shook his head and forcibly suppressed all the thoughts in his mind. "Then you rest first. I'll eat something with Qianqing." "What do you want to eat?" "I'll bring you a portion?" Li Beidian asked. "Whatever. Anything is fine." Li Tianlan lay casually on the bed and said calmly. Li Beidian nodded and said no more. He walked directly out of the ward with Ning Qianqing. The ward became quiet again. The light of the setting sun faded, and darkness enveloped the earth. Only the sound of waves beating on the shore continued to echo and enter the ears. Li Tianlan lay motionless on the bed, thinking about the camp at the border, the desert in Beijiang and the current Sky Academy. He felt that his thoughts had never been clearer, but also never been more messy. It was the expectation and confusion for the future. The former Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, the former god of war family. What was his fate? What was his own fate? His phone vibrated. Li Tianlan picked up the phone and glanced at it. His steady heartbeat suddenly began to speed up uncontrollably. It was not a phone call on the screen, but a video call from Qin Weibai from thousands of miles away. This was the first time Qin Weibai had sent him a video call since she went to Billy State. Li Tianlan turned over on the bed and lay on his stomach. His fingers that connected the video call were trembling slightly. The video call was connected. After a short delay, Qin Weibai's delicate and sharp, flawless beautiful face appeared directly on the screen. The kind of yearning with a little warmth and a little uneasiness seemed to flow through Li Tianlan's body. He stared at the screen in front of him and didn't know what to say for a moment. Qin Weibai took the initiative to break the silence. She smiled softly and said, "It's so dark over there. I can't see you clearly." "No, I forgot to turn on the light." Li Tianlan said a little awkwardly, but he didn't move. He felt as if his face was on fire. There was embarrassment, and nervousness. Fortunately, there was darkness to cover up such a state, so he didn't look so unnatural. "What are you doing?" Qin Weibai asked softly. Because of the time difference, it was late at night in Billy State, but she was still dressed neatly. She seemed to be in a study. Behind her was a huge bookshelf and a crystal chandelier that looked extremely complicated and gorgeous. The chandelier flowed with a dreamy luster. Under the light, Qin Weibai had a kind of soul-stirring beauty. "I'm in a daze. What about you?" Li Tianlan gave a simple response. "I was thinking about you, so I opened a video call for you." Qin Weibai held her cheek with one hand and held the phone with the other. She smiled and squinted her eyes. Her whole body was rippling with an indescribable tenderness. "Ah." Li Tianlan opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. His heartbeat was getting faster and faster, making his mouth a little dry. "Have you eaten?" Seeing that Li Tianlan didn't say anything, Qin Weibai pursed her lips and continued to ask. "Not yet. I don't have an appetite." Li Tianlan shook his head and looked at Qin Weibai's face seriously, not willing to miss any detail. "What? Are you unhappy?" Qin Weibai was also looking at Li Tianlan seriously. The look in their eyes was almost the same, but they didn't realize it. "I'm okay. I'm just a little tired." Li Tianlan scratched his head and suddenly wanted to smoke again. "You still need to eat something and go to bed early after eating. You should have a holiday after the entrance maneuver. Have you thought about going out for a walk?" Qin Weibai said softly. "Well, I'm going home. You said you left me some information. I want to have a look." Li Tianlan's tone was a little fast. He didn't know how nervous he was when he said he was going home. "Well." Qin Weibai's voice suddenly became soft. The softness of a little woman, which no one had ever seen before, overflowed unconsciously. She was charming and charming. She suddenly asked, "Did you miss me after I came to Billy State?" Li Tianlan was stunned and nodded subconsciously. "Yes." He hesitated, then gritted his teeth and said, "I missed you very much." At this moment all the pressure and annoyance in his heart disappeared, and his eyes were unprecedentedly bright. Qin Weibai smiled softly, but she laughed out loud. "I missed you very much too." Her voice was low and soft, like a warm current, flowing directly into Li Tianlan's heart. Li Tianlan scratched his head and giggled. On the other side of the screen, Qin Weibai looked at him quietly for a while and said, "I'm hanging up. There are still some things to deal with. If you miss me, you can turn on the video, call me at any time. My phone is always with me." "Okay." Li Tianlan responded. Watching Qin Weibai's face disappear in front of his eyes, his heart became a little sad. At the same time, thousands of miles away in the Aurora Hotel in Bruxelles. In the luxury suite, Qin Weibai looked at the dim screen of her phone, and her eyes were also a little sad. There were a lot of documents piled up in front of her. The ones on the left had been dealt with, and the ones on the right had not been read. But at this moment, holding the phone, she suddenly lost interest in everything in front of her. There was a slight knock on the door. Before Qin Weibai could answer, Flaming Fire had pushed the door open and walked in. She said respectfully, "Boss, General Bashir is still waiting." General Bashir. In Billy State this was definitely a resounding name. He was the real power in the military of Billy State, and he had a real high position and power. But at this time, such a powerful general had been waiting in a carefully prepared negotiation room in the hotel for nearly 6 hours. "I won't see him." Qin Weibai shook her head and said lightly. "Okay." Flaming Fire nodded expressionlessly and turned to go out. "Flaming Fire." Qin Weibai suddenly shouted. Flaming Fire's figure, which was about to go out, paused slightly and stopped at the door. "Get ready." Qin Weibai's eyes were deep and gentle. She looked at the phone in her tender white palm. "Let's go back to Zhongzhou State. Now." "Now." Flaming Fire's expression changed and she hesitated. "But tomorrow? Let's go back to Zhongzhou State now." With her back to Flaming Fire, she quietly turned on her mobile phone and looked at Li Tianlan, who was in a daze on the screen. She murmured softly, "I miss him. I miss him so much." Flaming Fire took a deep breath, answered, and turned to leave directly. Qin Weibai was still sitting in the same position, quietly looking at Li Tianlan on the phone, her eyes hazy. In a trance, she seemed to think of that dream again. She thought of that man, the heavy snow many years ago, and the end of his destiny, which was full of thunder and snowflakes. Qin Weibai's eyes became more and more hazy and blurred. Tears quietly slid down her cheeks. She came to her senses and wiped her eyes. On the screen of the phone, the dull Li Tianlan became clear again. She tightly pursed her rosy lips and looked calm, but her eyes, which were as bright as the galaxy, were burning with endless madness. Chapter 34. Even as the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Yuetong was in some ways just like ordinary people. She was very interested in going out to play, especially when she thought that she would be locked up on this island for an unknown period of time. She seemed to be even more impatient. At dawn, Wang Yuetong had already arrived at Li Tianlan's ward. She seemed to know that it was a little early, so her voice was a little low and she seemed a little guilty. "Senior brother Tianlan, are you up?" "Yes," Li Tianlan answered. He was in a deep sleep, but he was extremely vigilant. The instinctive attitude of guarding against everything around him had long been engraved in his blood and bones. Not to mention when he was asleep, even when he was in a deep coma, once someone who could threaten his safety appeared, he could also rely on instinct to make unconscious counterattacks. Before Wang Yuetong approached the door, he had already opened his eyes. She hesitated at the door again. When she opened her mouth, Li Tianlan had basically put on his clothes. He stood up from the bed, stretched his body and said casually, "Come in, the door is not locked." The door was gently pushed open, and Wang Yuetong walked into the ward with a smile on her face. She looked at Li Tianlan with a sweet smile. Even Li Tianlan, who had been occupied by Qin Weibai and could hardly contain any color, at the sight of Wang Yuetong at this moment, his eyes also lit up. The camouflage uniforms of the Sky Academy were only for convenience in combat, and they were not particular about style at all. They were even a little loose. Wang Yuetong's appearance in camouflage uniforms was already extremely stunning, but after she changed into casual clothes, her charm increased a lot. Now the little princess of the Wang family, the little demon girl, seemed to be shining from head to toe. Wherever she went, she was the focus of people's attention. She was wearing a pair of white skin-tight jeans, which completely outlined the lines of her slender legs. It could be said that her legs were one of the most beautiful legs Li Tianlan had ever seen. They were long, slender, and straight, almost comparable to Qin Weibai's. After taking off her military boots, Wang Yuetong put on a pair of black but playful stiletto heels, which almost held up all her aura. She was wearing a white long-sleeved sweater, which was also a slim style, which fully displayed her charming figure. Her long hair casually fell over her shoulders. She smiled softly, like an elf or an angel who had been left in the world. At this moment Wang Yuetong seemed to have changed into another person. The charming and flamboyant coquettish aura had all disappeared. Instead, she was a very quiet, lively, and somewhat elegant beautiful girl. "You are very beautiful today, even more beautiful than yesterday." After a few seconds of silence, Li Tianlan took the initiative to open his mouth and praised sincerely. "Is that so? Senior brother Tianlan, do you like this type?" Wang Yuetong's smile became sweeter and sweeter. She took the initiative to turn in a circle in front of Li Tianlan. The sound of her high-heeled shoes hitting the ground was crisp and sweet. In a trance, the moment Wang Yuetong turned around, Li Tianlan's eyes were completely attracted by her extremely perky buttocks wrapped under the skin-tight jeans. What a beautiful scenery. Li Tianlan suppressed his wild imagination and said directly, "Why don't I see Qinyan?" Yu Qinyan and Wang Yuetong were now in the same dormitory, and there were only the two of them in the dormitory for the time being. Now that it was the holiday, Yu Qinyan had no reason to stay at school instead of accompanying Yu Donglai if Wang Yuetong wanted to go out. Li Tianlan also happened to be going to Yu Donglai's place to get the key. He had thought that they could go together, but he did not expect that Wang Yuetong would come alone. Before Wang Yuetong could answer, footsteps sounded at the door. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing walked in one after another. Wang Yuetong's bright eyes turned, and she seemed to be unaware of everything behind her. She chuckled and said, "Qinyan is a sensible girl. She said that she would not disturb me and her brother Li, so she went home first." Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing, who had just entered the door, suddenly froze. Wang Yuetong said this with her back to them, leaving them some leeway. But the meaning of her words could not be more obvious. Yu Qinyan was so sensible, if they went out with Li Beidian, wouldn't it be insensible? The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai had made it so clear that she wanted to spend time with Li Tianlan alone. If they were still so insensible, they would offend her. Li Beidian coughed softly. Wang Yuetong seemed to have just noticed their arrival. She turned her head and said with some surprise, "Why are you so early?" "We're here to say hello to Tianlan," Li Beidian said with a straight face. Wang Yuedong's eyes were full of smiles, but Li Tianlan was puzzled. Say hello to what? Well, Qianqing and I suddenly have something to deal with, so we have to stay in the academy for some time. Tianlan, you go out with Yuetong first. We'll go to you after we deal with things and then we'll contact you by phone? Li Baidian said casually. But looking at his twinkling eyes, Li Tianlan was not stupid. How could he not know that they were making way for Wang Yuetong? This gave Li Tianlan a headache. Before he grew up completely or before he was completely against the Wang family of Beihai, he and Wang Yuetong could probably maintain the relationship of good friends or even confidants. But all this was an illusion after all. When the Li family appeared in Zhongzhou State again and faced the Wang family of Beihai, it would be a matter of the overall situation. In the overall situation, the friendship between him and Wang Yuetong could only become the entanglement and helplessness of both sides. From this point of view, Li Tianlan did not intend to be too close to Wang Yuetong. That night, he had stabilized the healing of his injury and his longevity, and he had regarded it as a favor that he had to return. In other words, Li Tianlan had clearly drawn a line between him and Wang Yuetong. Now he really did not want to be alone with her. Although her charm was not enough to change Li Tianlan's standpoint, he still felt uncomfortable at the thought that one day they would part ways or even oppose each other. My aunt is now in Huading. We haven't seen each other for more than a year. After Baidian and I finish our business, I'll go to visit my aunt. How about tonight? Let's get together at night, okay? Ning Qianqing glanced at Wang Yuedong's face and simply gave her a clear time. It was only early in the morning. From morning to night, it would be more than 10 hours, which was not a short time at all. He believed that the time was enough to satisfy Wang Yuetong. After all, it was impossible for the two to spend the night outside alone. Not to mention that Wang Yuetong would not do that, even if she really took the wrong medicine and wanted to do so. The experts of the Wang family of Beihai who secretly protected Wang Yuetong would not agree. Senior brother Tianlan? Wang Yuetong got the answer she was satisfied with and turned to look at Li Tianlan. Her eyes were still soft and even a little sweet, but there was a trace of toughness and persistence in them that would not make people feel disgusted. I don't care. Li Tianlan said flatly. Then it's decided. Let's go. Wang Yuetong giggled and ran over to pull Li Tianlan's arm. Yuetong, where are you taking Tianlan? Ning Qianqing suddenly asked without batting an eyelid. Wang Yuetong did not think too much about it. With her identity, she could be completely unscrupulous among the younger generation and say whatever she wanted. Second uncle has just returned to Huading recently. I'm taking him to meet him. Was he going to meet his parents? Second uncle? Li Baidian was fine. He had been in Mount Shu for a long time. Although he was not ignorant of the outside world, he would not pay too much attention to it. However, Ning Qianqing's face suddenly changed. But it was not convenient for him to say anything in front of Wang Yuetong, so he just gave Li Tianlan a wink. Wang Yuetong's second uncle was the younger brother of Wang Tianzong, the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. He was an extremely famous figure in Huading and even the entire Zhongzhou state. He could even be said to be one of the most famous playboys. Not only was he popular in the playboy circle, but he also had great power in the political and business circles of Zhongzhou state. Ning Qianqing had never met Wang Yuetong's second uncle, but it was said that he was less than 30 years old and had entered the thunder-shocking realm for nearly 3 years. He even had the hope of breaking through to the invincible realm in the future. The Wang family of Beihai had been established in Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years. There were countless versions of rumors about them, even specific to a certain core member. The most widely circulated version today was that after the Prince Group took over Huading from the Southeast Group 5 years ago, the Wang family of Beihai was not reconciled to it and directly sent Wang Yuetong's second uncle over, intending to secretly fight for the dominance of Huading. Now, the internal power hierarchy of Huading was very chaotic. Even if the Prince Group took over Huading, it would only take the first opportunity. It was still far from the situation of being a sole power. The Wang family of Beihai directly sent this heavyweight to Huading. It seemed that they really intended to fight for the dominance of Huading. Ning Qianqing was not very clear about the second uncle's ability, but he was well aware of his domineering and ferocious nature. It was said that a few months ago Wang Yuetong's second uncle beat Huading's young master Zhong Yuwei into a vegetative state in Huading for a mysterious woman with the surname Qin. The incident caused quite a stir. After that, the super playboy of the Wang family of Beihai swaggered back to Beihai province. After keeping a low profile for a few months, he came back again. It seemed that Zhong Yuwei's matter had been left unsettled. Zhong Yuwei himself was not a big deal, but his uncle could be regarded as a real top bigwig in the entire Zhongzhou state. Zhong Yongming. He was one of the leaders of the Prince Group, a member of the Zhongzhou Decision-Making Committee, and the top leader of Huading. Zhong Yue, such a backer, was directly abolished. It seemed that he was lying in the hospital in a coma until now. But a few months had passed, and the Zhong family had never taken any action. The strength of the Wang family of Beihai and the ferociousness and arrogance of this second uncle were all evident. Watching Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong walk out of the ward, Ning Qianxing frowned and took out his mobile phone. He tried to shorten the words he wanted to say and typed quickly. Li Beidian also took out his mobile phone with a smile and sent a message to Li Tianlan. "What the hell did you send? Why are you smiling so wretchedly?" Ning Qianxing asked with a frown. "I told Tianlan that it's treacherous to refuse her. The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. TSK. I hope he can understand what I mean." Li Beidian said with a smile. "Bullshit. Do you know who Wang Yuetong is taking Tianlan to see?" Ning Qianxing said coldly. "Who?" Li Beidian was slightly stunned. "Isn't she an elder?" Ning Qianxing was so angry that he had a headache. He rubbed his temples hard and continued to type without looking up. "Yes, she is an elder, but she is also the playboy who seems to be the most idle and reckless in the entire Wang family of Beihai. Wang Xiaoyao. King Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai. Do you really think this meeting is a good thing?" When they walked out of the hospital gate, the sky was already bright. The air was slightly cold. Li Tianlan walked in front in silence, thinking about who Wang Yuetong's second uncle was and what was the point of Wang Yuetong taking him there. Suddenly, a light and charming voice sounded behind him. "Senior brother Tianlan, are you nervous?" Li Tianlan was about to answer when the phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated. He took out the phone and looked at the message from Li Beidian. After a while he replied, "Damn you." As soon as he finished typing, the phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Ning Qianxing. Li Tianlan opened it and scanned it quickly. Suddenly he smiled and put the phone back into his pocket calmly. He said, "The Wang family of Beihai occupies Zhongzhou state and is a real behemoth. It's understandable that I'm a little nervous, isn't it? Don't worry. Second uncle won't eat people." Wang Yuetong giggled and approached Li Tianlan. The fresh and fragrant scent of a young girl blew over, intoxicating him. But Li Tianlan secretly smiled bitterly. "Won't eat people?" In the message sent by Ning Qianxing, it was clear that Wang Yuetong's second uncle, Wang Xiaoyao, would eat people without spitting out the bones. "Furthermore, I'm not taking you out this time to see second uncle." "Then who?" Li Tianlan asked in confusion. "A Taoist priest named Xian Xuanzi." Wang Yuetong said softly with awe in her eyes. She suddenly asked, "Senior brother Tianlan, do you believe in fate?" "Fate?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. After a long silence, he said calmly, "Whether I believe it or not, my grandfather once told me that I cannot believe in fate, but I cannot be disrespectful and fearless." "You will believe it?" Wang Yuetong walked beside Li Tianlan and looked at him quietly. Her eyes were even brighter than the rising sun. "Senior brother Tianlan, today in front of Xian Xuanzi, you will see your own fate. The real fate." Chapter 35. Garden Party. For most Huading locals this was a very strange name. But for a few people it was one of the top clubs in the entire Huading. Garden Party was located in the Lanshan National Forest Park in the southwest of Huading's Yunjian district. It covered an area of less than 1,500 acres, surrounded by ancient trees and towering yellow trees that blocked the sun. A group of antique buildings dotted the surrounding green hills and clear waters. The scenery was extremely tranquil. Although the club was built in the National Forest Park, it was not listed or open to the public. Instead, it implemented a membership system. In the nearly 5 or 6 years since its establishment, there were less than 100 members. Therefore, the entire building complex was in a state of extreme desolation most of the time. In the early morning sun, Wang Yuetong drove a beige beetle along a hidden path. While driving, she introduced the garden party to Li Tianlan. Garden party was started by second uncle when he first came to Huading. In the past 5 years, less than 100 membership cards have been issued. Among them, 20 are senior members and the rest are ordinary members. But even ordinary members are some very powerful people in Huading. A membership card of Garden Party can also represent the cardholder's identity in Huading to a certain extent. Wang Yuetong blinked her eyes and looked at the road ahead. She said softly, Senior brother, I'll ask second uncle to give you a membership card later. In the future, when we are on vacation and I'm not around, you can come here for a walk. Although there are not many guests here on weekdays, once you meet them, it's worth making friends. The Sky Academy is not an ordinary school. The connections inside and outside the school are very close. If you want to develop in Huading or in the south in the future, it's always good to know more people. And the less than 100 members here are the most worthy of knowing. Thank you. Li Tianlan said calmly, but he sighed softly in his heart. Wang Yuatong might be kind to him, but the nearly 100 members of Garden Party were destined to be of little help to him. After all, every member here was basically a member of the Southeast Group, or someone who would not have a conflict of interest with the Southeast Group in a short time. Now the Southeast Group was dominated by the Wang family of Beihai. Once his identity was exposed, it was conceivable how the people here would treat him. However, Li Tianlan also understood Wang Yuetong's thoughts. It was certain that she wanted to help him. But from her point of view, the other meaning of her help was that she wanted him to integrate into the system of the Southeast Group. This might seem right to Wang Yuetong, but Li Tianlan couldn't do it. It was better to be a farmer than a vassal. If they wanted to be a vassal, except for Kunlun City, everyone, including the Prince Group, would welcome Grandpa and the Li family to join them. Why did the Li family bother to guard the border for so many years? Why did he have to carefully hide his identity? As long as they could swallow their pride, the entire Li family might have already reappeared in Zhongzhou State as a vassal. But why had Grandpa endured for so many years? For so many years, countless elites of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun had followed Grandpa to guard the border. Why would they rather die in battle than leave the camp? It was all because of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun and the dignity and pride of the god of war family for hundreds of years. Who would want to be someone else's vassal? Who would dare to be someone else's vassal? Li Tianlan sat in the passenger seat of the Beetle in silence. With a calm expression, he let Wang Yuetong take him through the path and into the gate of the Garden Party. A large area of ancient garden-like buildings appeared in Li Tianlan's sight. In April, the flowers were blooming in the warmth of spring, and there were thousands of purple and red flowers. In front of him, there were small bridges, flowing water, and pavilions full of ancient style, which made people forget the secular world. Occasionally, there were gentle and elegant waitresses and cheongsams shuttling through the beautiful flowers with trays in their hands. All the scenes in front of him revealed an extremely rare kind of tranquility and peace from the details. All the ups and downs of the secular world seemed to be completely non-existent. Li Tianlan thought of Qin Weibai in a sentence. I really should have brought you here. Every time Qin Weibai saw something new and sent him a WeChat message, she probably had this kind of mentality, right? Let's go. Looking at Li Tianlan, who was in a daze, Wang Yuetong came to him and whispered with a smile, "Don't look anymore. If you like this place, you can come often after you get the card. During the 7-day holiday, you can stay here every day and no one will care. But you can't have any ideas about the waitresses here. The women here are all shrewd and they eat you up without spitting out the bones." Li Tianlan followed Wang Yuetong across a small bridge. Looking at the clear water and the fish in the water under his feet, he laughed casually and said, "What? Can you have ideas about the waitresses here?" Theoretically, yes. There are 3 beauties in the Garden Party: beautiful scenery, delicious food, and beautiful women. Wang Yuetong explained in a low voice, "Every waitress here has to have at least a master's degree, and they must have enough EQ and good looks. Any one of them can be regarded as a real beauty with taste and beauty. If they are willing to have something with the guests, the manor won't care." What a foul atmosphere. Li Tianlan shook his head and said subconsciously. Wang Yuetong glanced at Li Tianlan in astonishment and suddenly burst into laughter. "Senior brother Tianlan, you are so cute when you are old-fashioned." Li Tianlan didn't bother to explain anything and followed Wang Yuetong all the way. After walking in the beautiful and quiet garden for more than 10 minutes, the destination finally appeared in front of them. Less than 20 meters away from his line of sight was an octagonal pavilion supported by several thick pillars. It was almost completely surrounded by water, and there was only a small path less than 2 meters wide extending forward all the way to the center of the pavilion. Inside the pavilion, an old man and a young man were sitting opposite each other on both sides of the stone table. They seemed to be playing chess. Wang Yuetong slightly quickened her pace. Before she got close, she called out, "Second uncle?" In the pavilion, the young man sitting opposite the old man raised his head. When he saw Wang Yuetong, a doting smile immediately appeared on his face. When he saw Li Tianlan, he was slightly stunned, but his smile didn't diminish. He waved to the two but didn't get up. Instead, he focused on the chessboard in front of him again. Li Tianlan calmly walked into the pavilion. He didn't look at the old man and the young man who were playing, but first glanced at the chessboard subconsciously. Inside the chessboard, black and white chess pieces crisscrossed, almost covering the whole chessboard. The two players looked solemn and they moved more and more slowly. Li Tianlan knew a little about Go. He only knew the rules but had never studied it deeply. After a brief glance, he felt something was wrong. The black and white chess pieces on the chessboard were well proportioned, but the layout was really strange, almost illogical and unreasonable. While he was puzzled, he saw the solemn old man put down the chess piece and said with a gentle smile, "I'll stop. If I continue, I'll lose. I'm tired." What a good game of Gamoku. It can be called a world-famous game. Wang Yuetong smiled casually. Although her tone was a compliment, there was no sincerity in it. Chess is a game of intelligence. Gamoku, Go, Chinese chess and even Chinese checkers are essentially the same. Princess, why do you care what chess it is? As long as you're happy, any game is the same. The old man looked up at Wang Yuetong and said with a smile. The old man was about 60 or 70 years old. He wore a green robe, had long hair and a short beard, and his hair and beard were all white. In terms of appearance, he could only be regarded as average, and his face was even a little sickly pale. The only extraordinary thing was his eyes. The old man's eyes didn't look very wise and experienced, but they were extremely bright, shining like stars as if they could see through everything in a flash. But what impressed Li Tianlan most was his temperament. It was a temperament that was hard to describe, as if it was pure to the extreme, mysterious and transcendental. He sat there quietly with a gentle smile and clear eyes, but it gave people the illusion that he was not a human being. Was this the extraordinary Taoist Shen Xuanzi who was said to be a guest of honor even by Wang Tianzong? Yuetong greets you, Taoist priest. Wang Yuetong bowed politely, but her tone was not soft. But what you said is wrong, Taoist priest. Although Gamoku and Go are both chess, their rules are very different. How can these two games be confused? They're all the same. The old man's eyes were still gentle, with indescribable calmness and deep meaning. The great way is the simplest. This girl doesn't like to use her brain since she was a child, so she can't understand what you're saying. The young man opposite to the old man glanced at Wang Yuetong with a smile. But this girl has a conscience. She came here just after the holiday. I didn't dote on you in vain. Second uncle, coming to you is not my main purpose. I heard that the old immortal Shen Xuanzi is here, so I came to get some immortal qi. Wang Yuetong wrinkled her nose and muttered. She took a step back, pulled Li Tianlan over and said with a smile, "Let me introduce you. This is senior brother Li Tianlan. We're in the same year. Senior brother Tianlan has wind and thunder veins, so his future is limitless." Wind and thunder veins. As soon as she said that, not to mention Wang Yuetong's second uncle Wang Xiaoyao, even Shen Xuanzi, who was sitting opposite Wang Xiaoyao, stared at Li Tianlan with his bright eyes. If that's the case, then he's a real young talent. Tianlan, this name is a bit interesting. Wang Xiaoyao looked at Li Tianlan, and his eyes flickered for a moment. He took the initiative to extend his hand and said with a smile, "Tianlan, I'm Wang Xiaoyao. You and Yuetong are classmates. If you don't mind, you can call me second uncle." Li Tianlan took a serious look at Wang Xiaoyao, shook hands with him and called him second uncle. Wang Xiaoyao was 30 years old, but he looked like he was in his late 20s. He was tall and handsome, a standard pretty boy. Ning Qianqing had said in WeChat that Wang Xiaoyao was the most domineering playboy in the Wang family of Beihai, but at this moment, Li Tianlan could not see it at all. On the contrary, Wang Xiaoyao's eyes were extremely modest and calm, and his smile was sincere, which made people feel good at first sight. He did not have the slightest domineering attitude. At this moment, Li Tianlan did not know that today's encounter was a meeting between rivals in love on a different level. But because of the preconceived notions instilled in him by Ning Qianqing, he became more vigilant when he looked at the low-key and modest Wang Xiaoyao. In his mind, such a person was definitely countless times more dangerous than those who were outwardly arrogant and domineering. "Sit down." Wang Xiaoyao patted Li Tianlan's shoulder casually, his movement natural. "You're Yuetong's friend, so you're not an outsider. Don't be nervous." Li Tianlan did not say much and sat down casually beside Wang Yuetong. In his perception, not only was Wang Xiaoyao sizing him up, but even the old Taoist Shen Xuanzi sitting opposite Wang Xiaoyao seemed to have his eyes on him a little longer. Li Tianlan turned to look at him and nodded slightly. "Do you believe in destiny, my young friend?" Shen Xuanzi, who had been observing Li Tianlan, suddenly asked with a smile and a gentle tone. Li Tianlan did not dare to be careless. Zhongzhou State was a vast land with abundant resources and countless extraordinary people. Although metaphysics was classified as superstition, real metaphysicians did not necessarily not exist. His grandfather once told him that there were indeed a few half-immortals in Zhongzhou State who could see through the fate of others at a glance despite playing games. Xian Xuanzi, who was in front of him, was treated as a distinguished guest by the Wang family of Beihai. Although Li Tianlan did not know if he also had the ability to see through his fate at a glance, he was sure that he was not a Jianghu swindler. Believe it or not, Li Tianlan said cautiously after a long silence. Of course. Xian Xuanzi's smile became more and more amiable. He stared at Li Tianlan's face seriously, and his interest grew stronger. He said again, "My young friend, everyone has a destiny. If you don't mind, can you show me your left hand and listen to me talk about your destiny?" Wang Xiaoyao was slightly stunned. There was some surprise in Wang Yuedong's eyes. This was the reason why she brought Li Tianlan here recently. Xian Xuanzi was a real extraordinary person in Taoism, a grandmaster of metaphysics. It was said that his eyes could not only see through the cause and effect of heaven and earth, but also control some of the fate of the country. Therefore, not only the Wang family of Beihai treated him as a distinguished guest, but also several power giants in the Hidden Dragon Sea, the power center of Zhongzhou State, treated him with great courtesy. What such an extraordinary person said almost had a prophecy effect. Wang Yuetong went to the Sky Academy this time with the intention of finding talents for the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was her most important target, not only because of his wind and thunder veins, but also because of his behavior. Wang Yuetong even had a good impression of him. If such a person joined the Wang family of Beihai, once he entered the invincible realm or even the thunder-shocking realm, the strength of the entire Wang family of Beihai would greatly increase. Now that Xian Xuanzi happened to come to Huading, Wang Yuetong brought Li Tianlan here to let Xian Xuanzi see his destiny. As long as he could give him some advice, Li Tianlan's growth could be accelerated again. For Li Tianlan this was a kindness, and it also meant that he could get closer to the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Yuetong was thinking about how to tell Xian Xuanzi, but she didn't know that the old Taoist was interested in Li Tianlan. This couldn't be better. Li Tianlan seemed a little surprised, but he had no reason to refuse. Even if the old Taoist could really see through his destiny, he didn't believe that the old Taoist could really see through his background. He thought for a while, then directly reached his left hand in front of Xian Xuanzi and said sincerely, "Thank you, Taoist." Xian Xuanzi nodded with a smile, narrowed his clear eyes and looked carefully. Li Tianlan waited quietly. Wang Yuetong sat beside him with her hands intertwined. She looked more nervous than Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao, who noticed this detail, frowned, but didn't say anything. Xian Xuanzi looked for nearly 5 minutes. Just when Li Tianlan thought he had fallen asleep, he moved his body, raised his eyes, looked at Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "Extreme prosperity leads to decline. My little friend, you must have experienced a lot of hardships when you were young. If I'm not wrong, about a year ago, my little friend, you just experienced a life and death tribulation. Am I right?" Li Tianlan subconsciously clenched his left hand, and his face changed dramatically. Such a reaction didn't need him to prove anything. It had already proved the accuracy of Xian Xuanzi. Xian Xuanzi acted as if he didn't see all this and continued, "What's next should be the sea and the sky. My little friend, after you graduate from the Sky Academy, I suggest you go to Wuyue to develop. Wuyue has King's Qi. If you can get a foothold in Wuyue, you'll have no regrets in your life. Judging from your palm reading, your little friend's fate for the rest of your life has been completed. It can be said that your fate is extremely prosperous, and you have the aura of a heavenly sun." Wang Xiaoyao instinctively narrowed his eyes. His eyes were cold and flashed with killing intent. He didn't doubt Xian Xuanzi's words, but there were 2 sentences in Xian Xuanzi's words that touched the most sensitive part of his heart. The first was Wuyue. Wuyue province was now the most prosperous and powerful province in Zhongzhou State. The provincial capital, Jinling, was very close to Huading. More importantly, the entire Wuyue province could be said to be the back garden of the Wang family of Beihai, and its firmness was second only to that of Beihai province. Wuyue was the place where the Wang family of Beihai first made its fortune. It was okay for Li Tianlan to join the Wang family of Beihai, but if he didn't, where would the Wang family of Beihai be when he got a foothold in Wuyue? The second was the aura of a heavenly sun. The heavenly sun appeared in Zhongzhou State every 500 years. The so-called heavenly sun must be someone who had a profound influence on the dark world. For example, the ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai who rose in Wuxia after the family fell into desolation hundreds of years ago and brought the Wang family of Beihai to its peak. The number one expert in the dark world was not necessarily a heavenly son, but a heavenly son was definitely the number one expert in the dark world. When the heavenly son appeared, the tribulation came. If the heavenly son faced the tribulation, who would face the heavenly son? This was also said by Xian Xuanzi. What he said couldn't be more obvious. Wang Xiaoyao looked at Li Tianlan and then at Wang Yuetong, whose eyes were a little excited. His expression changed and finally he hid all the killing intent and calmed down again. Li Tianlan looked at Xian Xuanzi seriously and said respectfully, "Thank you for your advice, Taoist." Xian Xuanzi smiled and waved his hand. Just when he was about to speak, Li Tianlan's phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan was stunned, and then he smiled apologetically at them, walked aside and picked up the phone. "I'm going to find something to eat. Senior brother and I didn't have breakfast. We're starving." Wang Yuetong said and also stood up to leave. Only Wang Xiaoyao and Xian Xuanzi were left in the pavilion again. There was a moment of silence. Xian Xuanzi glanced at Wang Xiaoyao who was thoughtful and suddenly laughed. "Xiaoyao, did you want to kill me just now?" Wang Xiaoyao didn't hide it. He smiled bitterly and acquiesced. "It's not necessary at all." Xian Xuanzi said softly, "From the standpoint of the Wang family of Beihai, I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise it may backfire." "What do you mean?" Wang Xiaoyao sat up straight subconsciously and asked attentively. "Exactly what I said." Xian Xuanzi smiled. "Within 10 years this guy's luck will be very prosperous. If you can get close to him it will definitely do more good than harm." "Within 10 years?" Wang Xiaoyao frowned. He could listen to every word of Xian Xuanzi and thought about it seriously. "What will happen after 10 years? Xian Xuanzi lowered his eyelids and said calmly, "After 10 years he will definitely die." Chapter 36. Walking out of the pavilion, Li Tianlan looked at the caller ID and was a little surprised. It turned out to be Yu Qingyan's phone number. He didn't have time to think and answered. Yu Donglai's old voice sounded directly from the other end of the phone. "Boy, where are you?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment and told the truth. "I'm at the garden party." "Did you see Wang Xiaoyao?" Yu Donglai's tone was flat, but Li Tianlan still heard a trace of nervousness from his tone. Not to mention that he now knew Li Tianlan's terrifying potential and bright future. Even if he didn't know anything, it was necessary for him to care about Li Tianlan because of Li Honghe. Li Tianlan's identity was hidden, but it didn't mean that there was no flaw. If Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai found out, the consequences would be disastrous. For many years, the silence of the Southeast Group and the centralization of power of the Wang family of Beihai had made Yu Donglai recognize the situation. In such a situation, once Li Tianlan's identity was exposed in front of the Wang family of Beihai, how could he survive? "Yes." Li Tianlan continued, "Senior Yu, do you have the key to Weibai's house?" "I'll get it today." "When are you free?" "Now I'm at home now. Come here and I'll give you the key." Yu Donglai was silent for a moment and said, "I guess with your identity, you won't have a good time staying there. Come here and let's have a drink." Wang Xiaoyao seemed to be a playboy and acted arrogantly, but he was definitely not a fool. After Huading fell, the forces of the Southeast Group in Huading were all in a panic. Several wealthy families moved their headquarters elsewhere, and the situation was extremely chaotic. In less than a year since Wang Xiaoyao entered Huading, he had stabilized the situation. After several years of operation, not only did the Prince Group never gain the initiative, but the remaining forces of the Southeast Group had completely stabilized their position. This kind of ability was really not something that an ordinary playboy could have. The more Li Tianlan stayed under Wang Xiaoyao's eyes, the more likely he would be exposed. It was better for him to come back as soon as possible. Now, Li Tianlan hesitated slightly. "Do you have any concerns?" Yu Donglai raised his eyebrows and asked. "I came with Wang Yuetong." Li Tianlan said softly. "That's fine, just bring him along. It just so happens that Qingyan is also here. The two sisters can chat while we chat. We won't disturb each other." Yu Donglai said indifferently. The old man was a top chef inside the Red Wall a few years ago. Earlier he was a life-and-death brother who followed Li Honghe to conquer the world. Although he did not enter the invincible realm at his peak, the name of Poison Doctor could also be a prominent figure in the dark world who could suppress most of the scenes. When he was with Li Honghe, he was also a top general of the Southeast Group. Over the years, as the Li family fell into desolation, The Wang family of Beihai turned a deaf ear to the Li family, but it absolutely took good care of the old ministers of the Southeast group who were still in Zhongzhou state. Even Wang Tianzong, the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai, visited Yudonglai's small courtyard in person. As for Wang Xiaoyao, since he came to Huading 5 years ago, he would definitely come to visit during the festival. Even Wang Yuetong and the next generation of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Xingxiao, who was known as the future heavenly son of Zhongzhou state, also came. Yu Donglai couldn't let go of the knot in his heart. He was not warm to Wang Xiaoyao, but he really liked Wang Yuetong. This girl was clever at a young age and wise at an older age. It was a pity that she was a woman. If she was a man, the Wang family of Beihai would definitely be more terrifying in the decades to come. Okay, then I'll go now. Li Tianlan did not hesitate and agreed directly. He was really not used to staying with Wang Xiaoyao and Xian Xuanzi. Xian Xuanzi was an extraordinary person of Taoism, and Wang Xiaoyao was a core figure of the Wang family of Beihai. In front of them, every word he said had to be repeated in his heart several times before he could say it. It was not a good feeling at all. Come here, I'll cook for you at noon. Have fun. Yu Donglai paused for a moment and then continued with a teasing tone. Boy, you stay in front of a love rival like Wang Xiaoyao. Are you hurt? Do you want me to comfort you? What love rival? Li Tianlan looked stunned. Didn't I tell you? Wang Xiaoyao, he has been in Huading for 5 years and he has been pursuing Little Bai for 4 years. He is infatuated with her and has put down his dignity. Even I, a bystander, feel sorry for him. Only she has a heart of stone and speaks to Wang Xiaoyao bluntly. Yu Donglai's voice was full of surprise and doubt. She didn't tell you? In the garden party by the edge of the clear pool, Li Tianlan's pupils suddenly turned a touch of demonic blood red. Perhaps until now, after experiencing Qin Weibai's gentle words in the video last night, he was still not sure about his relationship with Qin Weibai. But when he suddenly heard that Wang Xiaoyao was pursuing Qin Weibai, he felt as if his most beloved and most cherished thing was being coveted. Violent rage surged in his heart almost at once, and his whole body was instantly filled with a trace of extremely cold killing intent. Yu Donglai seemed to realize that he had said something he shouldn't have said. He hurriedly said, Boy, don't be impulsive. It's just Wang Xiaoyao's unrequited love. What's the big deal? Little Bai rarely shows up in Huading, but it doesn't mean that she never shows up. There are many people who have unrequited love. What's so good about it? Don't you think so? If you care about this, you won't be able to finish killing people every day in the future. Li Tianlan closed his eyes. After a full minute, he opened his eyes. The blood red in his pupils had disappeared, and he had regained his calmness. He said flatly, I'll go to your place now. He put down the phone and was about to turn around when Wang Yuetong's voice sounded behind him. Senior brother Tianlan, where are you going? I suddenly have something urgent to do. I have to leave for a while. Li Tianlan turned to look at Wang Yuetong and said softly. Wang Yuetong was slightly stunned and then she simply said, Okay, we'll tell second uncle and then we'll set off. I'll give you a ride. I brought you here today to let you meet Xian Xuanzi. We've achieved our goal and it's time for us to leave. It's a pity that we haven't had breakfast yet. The breakfast here is delicious. Li Tianlan's thoughts were a little complicated. He simply nodded and followed Wang Yuetong into the pavilion again. Second uncle, senior brother Tianlan has something urgent to deal with. We'll leave first. We'll come to you during the next holiday. Walking into the pavilion, Wang Yuetong directly said to Wang Xiaoyao without waiting for breakfast. Wang Xiaoyao was stunned and then he looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan did not look at him. He just bowed slightly to Xian Xuanzi and thanked him again. Thank you for your advice, Taoist. Xian Xuanzi nodded with a smile. His clear and complicated eyes slightly shifted and fell on the pool outside the pavilion. I finally see that Yuetong came here today to let you meet the Taoist, not to see me, your second uncle. It's a failure for an uncle to do what I do. Wang Xiaoyao laughed at himself and came to Li Tianlan. He looked at Li Tianlan strangely for a while and continued to say with a smile, Since you have something to do, go ahead. He fumbled in his pocket and took out a hard card from it. He handed it to Li Tianlan. This is the membership card here. Take it as a greeting gift. Come here when you're free in the future and I'll introduce some friends to you. Wang Yuetong tugged at Li Tianlan's sleeves and motioned for him to accept it. Although the card second uncle took out was not the most honorable supreme card in the garden party, no one would look down on this gold card no matter where he went. This was a gift of great sincerity. Li Tianlan looked down at the card in Wang Xiaoyao's hand. The card glowed with silver light, and it was hard to tell whether it was made of platinum or silver. There were no words on the card, only a vague pattern. The lines were simple but the momentum was magnificent. If one looked closely, there seemed to be clouds and water splashes in the pattern, but the magnificent feeling made Li Tianlan think of the sky and the sea at once. The sky and the sea? Li Tianlan was slightly stunned. He suddenly found that the meaning of the pattern was a little similar to his name. Was it a coincidence? Or was there another reason? Li Tianlan's mind was running wild, but his expression was extremely calm. He reached out his hand but he did not take the card. Instead, he pushed the card in Wang Xiaoyao's hand back and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Wang. But I'm studying at the Sky Academy and I have too little free time. I'm afraid it's a waste to take this card. Forget it." He knew what kind of benefits would be brought to him by taking the card, and he also knew that his actions might be a little immature. But knowing that this man was pursuing Qin Weibai, it was impossible for him to call Wang Xiaoyao second uncle again, take the greeting gift from him and get to know his friends as a junior. There were some things that had to be done even if he knew it was irrational. He hid his stubbornness and pride deeply, but it did not mean that he did not have them. Xian Xuanzi looked at Li Tianlan in surprise. Wang Yuetong was even more stunned. She stared at him with a pair of big eyes. There were doubts, grievances and some anger in her eyes. Wang Xiaoyao also narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Tianlan's expression seriously. Li Tianlan was still smiling. It was a kind of seemingly sincere but extremely pale smile without any inner meaning. He quietly looked into Wang Xiaoyao's eyes and did not give in. Okay. The two looked at each other for nearly half a minute. Wang Xiaoyao smiled and slowly took back the card in his hand. He said, "Come often when you have time." Li Tianlan nodded casually and said, "Goodbye, Mr. Wang." He did not wait for Wang Xiaoyao to speak and directly turned to the parking lot. Wang Yuetong stayed there alone for a while. Then she suddenly stamped her feet and chased after Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao looked at the card in his hand and casually threw it into the pool. He said with a smile, "This guy is a little interesting. Does he have a backbone? Or does he not like me? Taoist, what do you think? You are destined to meet this guy. I'm afraid there will be a lot of entanglements in the future." Xian Xuanzi said with a calm smile. "He has wind and thunder veins but he is still so tough." Wang Xiaoyao thought for a moment and said, "I have never heard of this person before. Extreme prosperity leads to decline." Xian Xuanzi repeated these 4 words again, intentionally or unintentionally. Wang Xiaoyao looked at the old Taoist suspiciously. Then he seemed to think of something and his eyes suddenly became cold. "What do you mean?" After walking out of the garden party and sitting in the beige beetle, Wang Yuetong, who had been silent all the way, finally could not help but stare at Li Tianlan in the passenger seat and ask angrily, "Boring?" Li Tianlan shook his head and said in a somewhat indifferent tone, "What do you mean by boring?" Wang Yuetong chased after him. She stubbornly looked at the man beside her, and her beautiful eyes were full of persistence. Li Tianlan did not want to speak and just shook his head coldly. He was extremely grateful to Wang Yuetong for her cooperation after the maneuver, for sending medicine, and for bringing him here today. But now, as the position of the Wang family of Beihai and Wang Xiaoyao's feelings for Qin Weibai appeared in front of him, he really did not want to have anything to do with this top wealthy family in Zhongzhou State, who he did not know whether they would be enemies or friends in the future. In his opinion, the conflict between him and the Wang family of Beihai in the future was almost inevitable. In this way, the more stories he had with Wang Yuetong, the more difficult it would be for her in the future. Instead of that, it was better to cut off the connection between them now. Even if they really became enemies in the future, their positions and views could be purer. Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan for a long time. Seeing that he did not want to speak at all, she gritted her teeth, started the car, and stepped hard on the accelerator. The beige beetle suddenly burst out a sound that did not match the car model, and the car instantly rushed out. Li Tianlan was expressionless. Wang Yuetong pouted and did not speak. The beetle rushed out of the hidden path to the garden party and continued to drive. In silence, Wang Yuetong spoke again. "Why didn't you pick up the card?" "He's my uncle. Is it difficult for you to call him second uncle?" "Mr. Wang, it's so unpleasant to hear." "Li Tianlan, did I offend you?" Li Tianlan, who did not say a word, pretended not to hear anything. Wang Yuetong glared at Li Tianlan with hatred and muttered, "My kindness has been treated as ill intent by you." She became silent again. In the narrow space, the two walked in silence all the way, like a pair of young lovers who were in a cold war after a quarrel. A Passat parked on the side of the road appeared in their sight. The Passat's double flash was turned on, and it seemed to be malfunctioning. It was motionless. A man and a woman in their 30s who looked like a husband and wife stood on the side of the road, looking helpless. Although this place was already in the public area of Lanshan National Park, it was not too far from the garden party, and there were no famous attractions nearby, so there were very few cars on weekdays. The couple parked their car on the side of the road, waiting for rescue, saw the beetle coming. The wife's eyes obviously lit up, and she kept waving at the beetle. Wang Yuatong subconsciously stepped on the brake. Speed up. Li Tianlan suddenly opened his mouth, his voice hurried and sharp. What? Wang Yuatong was angry. Hearing the dead man next to her finally opened his mouth, she said angrily. I've seen this car and these two people before. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes tightly. When we came they followed us for a long time. His memory and grasp of details had always been at an abnormal level. Not far from the Sky Academy, they stopped at a traffic light. Li Tianlan had once seen this Passat and even inadvertently made eye contact with the couple in the car. After that, the Passat followed them for nearly 10 kilometers before disappearing. At first, Li Tianlan just thought they were going the same way and he did not think much about it. But now seeing this Passat again he suddenly became alert. Wang Yuetong's expression changed. This place was more than 10 kilometers away from the garden party, but it was only 4 or 5 kilometers away from the crowded area ahead. How to make a decision? Wang Yuetong did not hesitate at all. She stepped on the accelerator and directly rushed forward. The sound of the beetle increased again. The compact body, which was obviously specially modified, instantly rushed out in an almost catapulting posture. In just 2 or 3 seconds, the car had reached a speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour. Watch out. The Passat behind them was getting farther and farther away. Li Tianlan's voice suddenly sounded again. Wang Yuetong, who was looking at the rearview mirror, looked up hurriedly. Straight ahead, a thick ice wall that almost filled the whole road appeared in front of them without warning. Wang Yuetong screamed. Li Tianlan had already reached out and pulled Wang Yuetong to his side. The next moment, the beetle crashed into the ice wall in front of them at nearly a speed of 150 kilometers per hour. There was a loud bang. Chapter 37. It was a close call. Wang Yuetong might be a little flustered, but Li Tianlan never lost his cool. The moment the ice wall appeared, he had already reached out his hand and kicked open the door beside him. The beetle hit the ice wall and Li Tianlan jumped out of the car with Wang Yuetong in his arms. Almost happened at the same time. Li Tianlan stepped on the flying car with his feet in the air. With a little help, the height of the two rose again. A flight of stairs made of pure ice suddenly appeared in the air less than 20 meters away from Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan, who was in the air, flashed slightly with Wang Yuetong in his arms. The next second he and Wang Yuetong were standing on the flight of stairs in the air. After a day, Li Tianlan entered the ice-condensing realm again. His eyes were cold and ferocious. His real realm was still in the chi-controlling realm. It seemed easy to forcibly improve his realm twice in a short time, but the burden on his body was unimaginable. This was a way to overdraft his potential in advance. It might be an exaggeration to say that he drank poison to quench his thirst. Every time he forcibly improved his realm, it would be a big obstacle to his future path of martial arts. If he did it too many times he might not be able to reach the invincible realm for the rest of his life. Perhaps there was the risk of not being able to achieve perfection in a certain realm. But under such circumstances he had to do it. Obviously this was a well-planned assassination. He and Wang Yuetong were followed as soon as they came out of the Sky Academy. After confirming their destination, they chose an easy place to wait for them. They were fully prepared. It was obviously difficult for him to deal with this kind of assassination in the chi-controlling realm. Even if he was in the ice-condensing realm, it would be difficult for him to deal with it. Now Li Tianlan only hoped that this assassination was aimed at him. After all, at present his only enemy was the Liu family of Huading. Gu Yunxia might not like him, but it was only a day after the maneuver. Such an assassination and attack must be a little rushed. The opposite party would not send two strong forces. At least they would not kill him and Wang Yuetong here. Senior brother Tianlan, their target is probably me. Wang Yuetong finally came to her senses. Her face was flushed as she was held in Li Tianlan's arms. But this chest, which was not so big, was extremely warm, so warm that she didn't even want to get up. Do you know them? Li Tianlan subconsciously let go of his hand and asked. I don't know them, but their attention has always been on me. Wang Yuetong's face was still ruddy, but her eyes gradually sharpened. Standing on the ice stairs, a majestic sword chi flew around her body. In the blink of an eye, a giant sword had been formed behind her. Li Tianlan's heart sank and he looked in the direction of Wang Yuetong's finger. In his sight, the man and woman who had pretended to be husband and wife at the beginning were sprinting toward him at high speed. Wang Yuetong's beetle accelerated extremely fast. In just a few seconds of acceleration, it had already left the couple hundreds of meters behind. Now, after a few words, the couple had already rushed over. Their target was Wang Yuetong. This was definitely not what Li Tianlan wanted to see. It was not that this siren of the Wang family was very important to Li Tianlan, but that if the other party targeted Wang Yuetong, it would definitely be more terrible and troublesome than if the other party targeted him. Those who targeted him were his enemies. Those who targeted Wang Yuetong were the enemies of the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai was deeply rooted in Zhongzhou state, and the patriarch Wang Tianzong was the top expert in Zhongzhou state. In such an environment, the force that dared to lurk in Zhongzhou state and attack the young core of the Wang family of Beihai was definitely not much worse than the Wang family of Beihai. This was equivalent to a secret competition between two superpowers in the dark world. It could be foreseen that Wang Yuetong was just the beginning. Once she was killed in Huading, there would be a series of plans next. In such a collision between superpowers, the first party to take action would definitely try to be foolproof. Today, when they came to kill Wang Yuetong, it was normal for there to be experts in the ice-condensing realm, the fire-flaming realm, and even the thunder-shocking realm. Bang! Li Tianlan was thinking, but the attacker did not want to give him so much time. At the moment when the young man and woman rushed over, a violent gunshot suddenly rang out, echoing in the mountain forest. Li Tianlan grabbed Wang Yuetong and flashed away. Another ice stair formed in front of them. The two dodged the bullet and stood on the newly formed ice stair, fully prepared. This body movement is a bit interesting. It doesn't seem to be the unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai. Young man, if you are an outsider, you can leave now. We won't embarrass you. What do you think? The young man and woman who rushed to the ice stair paused slightly. The young woman narrowed her eyes and smiled charmingly. Li Tianlan looked indifferent and said nothing. Not to mention that it was not in his character to leave Wang Yuetong behind in such a situation, and not to mention whether the Wang family of Beihai would vent their anger on him after he left. This carefully prepared assassination was almost impossible for an outsider like Li Tianlan to not kill him. The young woman's words were completely nonsense. No one with a normal IQ would believe it. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me? Wang Yuetong finally spoke. She was completely calm. She looked down at the young man and woman below, her eyes full of pure pride and coldness. Princess, before you die, we will tell you. The young woman smiled more charmingly. Behind such a smile, it represented absolute confidence and the game of cat and mouse, which made people feel very uncomfortable. You. Wang Yuetong sneered. The attacker was not in a hurry to make a move, so naturally she and Li Tianlan were not in a hurry either. Although this place was not close to the garden party, it was not too far away either. As soon as she reacted, she had already crushed a button on her body, which was the alarm device on her body. Second uncle must have received the news by now. For her, the longer she delayed, the better. The young woman's smile remained unchanged. She said softly, "Of course not. There are still them." As her voice fell, countless sharp explosions sounded in the air at the same time. In an instant, more than a dozen ice swords broke through the air, and the cold and sharp sword energy whistled in the air, densely packed. Wang Yuetong was stalling for time. The young man and woman in front of her were also waiting for their men to complete the encirclement. It took more than courage to attack the young core of the Wang family of Beihai in Zhongzhou state. Strength, intelligence, connections, and speed were all indispensable. The young woman did not have the patience to talk nonsense with Wang Yuetong. When her men finished gathering, she started to attack directly without saying anything. The moment the ice swords broke through the air, the giant sword formed behind Wang Yuetong shrank almost in the blink of an eye. The body of the sword shrank, but the sharpness was stronger. In a very short time, it seemed that a large amount of sword energy began to condense toward the shrinking giant sword, but more sword energy went nowhere. More than a dozen ice swords shuttled through the air. Surrounded by sword energy, Wang Yuetong suddenly jumped up from the ice stairs and grasped the hilt of the giant sword behind her. The giant sword had shrunk to nearly 2 meters in a short time, but it still looked huge in Wang Yuetong's hand. Wang Yuetong waved the heavy ice sword in her hand, and the majestic sword energy in the air suddenly became violent. Like the wind. Like the clouds. In an instant, the surrounding air seemed to be twisted into swords and then ice. One after another, delicate but sharp ice swords whizzed and rose around Wang Yuetong's delicate body. There were so many of them. Wang Yuetong's face was pale, and she waved the giant sword in her hand again. In her sight, about a dozen figures rushed out from both sides of the road, echoing the ice swords in the air, and rushed to Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan together. As she waved the giant sword, Wang Yuetong jumped down the ice stairs and went straight to the crowd below. A large number of exquisite small swords around Wang Yuetong danced wildly as she leaped up. More than a dozen ice swords in the air were torn into powder by the large number of small swords before they could get close. The powder once again condensed into identical small swords in the air and followed Wang Yuetong's body from high to low, rising and falling like huge waves. Wang Yuetong's body landed on the ground. She directly attacked. The sword current, like a huge wave, spun and bloomed in an instant, surrounding more than a dozen attackers in the ice-condensing realm on the ground. On the road, in the dense sword intent, the girl and the sword seemed to reveal an indomitable determination and madness. The unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai. Sword frenzy. The life-and-death battle was set, but Li Tianlan dared not to act rashly. Although there were many people besieging Wang Yuetong, they were only a group of experts in the ice-condensing realm. The sword frenzy was like a tide of sword intent, which was most suitable for group fighting. Wang Yuetong should have no problem holding on for a while. But the young man and woman in front of him were unpredictable. They did not move, so Li Tianlan could only guard against them, silently looking for a chance to cut into Wang Yuetong's battlefield. Time passed quickly, but for Li Tianlan, every second was like a year. The young man and woman who appeared first but did not move narrowed their eyes at Li Tianlan, and then looked at Wang Yuetong, who was a little embarrassed in the siege but did not show any signs of defeat. They obviously did not want to waste time. After waiting for less than 2 minutes, their patience was basically gone. They looked at each other and the young man's figure flashed. In an instant, the flames were everywhere and his figure had gone straight to Wang Yuetong, who was in the center of the battle. Fire-flaming realm. And he was an expert close to the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Still standing on the ice stair, the silver light in Li Tianlan's hand lit up, and a new ice stair appeared in front of the young man. In the blazing flames, the cold breath of the ice stair rushed to his face. Along with the cold breath, a silver spear smashed down from the sky. There was no silver spear light that was squeezed into a ball, and there was no attack made of ice. It was just a spear. It was the simplest and also the most violent shot. In an instant, the young man who rushed to Wang Yuetong could only hear the harsh whistling of the spear breaking through the sky. He could feel the extreme and pure power contained in this spear. If he met force with force, he would definitely be seriously injured in an instant. An expert in the ice-condensing realm could seriously injure an expert close to the peak of the fire-flaming realm with a spear. Such strength was extremely amazing. But he was also sure that even if he was seriously injured, the young man opposite him would not have an easy time. In a short time, just one move, and the young man had already fought in a way of mutual destruction. Such a violent fighting style was extremely stupid. The young man frowned slightly. He didn't think that today's action would fail, so he didn't think it was necessary to meet force with Li Tianlan. The long spear chopped down, and in the nick of time, he jumped back and stood with the young woman who rushed up. But the next moment, what made them laugh out of anger was that the young man with the target held a long spear. Not only did he not guard against their attacks, but he directly turned around, exposed his back and rushed to Wang Yuetong, who was besieged. Where did the Wang family of Beihai get so many idiots who were so foolishly loyal? You're courting death. The young woman snorted and suddenly made a move. A dazzling stream of fire spread wildly as she raised her hand. The flame formed a line, and there was some vague thunder-shocking essence. There was no doubt that the young woman was the most terrible attacker on the scene. Her strength had already surpassed the fire-flaming realm and was infinitely close to the thunder-shocking realm. Li Tianlan didn't look back and continued to rush forward. He was now only dozens of meters away from Wang Yuetong. Under normal circumstances, as long as he could condense the ice stair there, he could cross it in one step. But now Wang Yuetong was besieged. Li Tianlan tried several times, but every time the ice stair just appeared, it was instantly crushed by the sword energy. In desperation, he could only sprint at full speed. The line of fire behind him was like lightning. Li Tianlan, who was charging with all his strength, swept the long spear in his hand. Two more ice stare appeared in front of him on both sides. His body flashed, and he moved to the left and right in a hair's breadth, avoiding the line of fire behind him, and continued to rush forward. The young woman sneered and jumped forward. How terrible was the explosive power of an expert who was about to enter the thunder-shocking realm. The two sides were not far from each other. Almost in the blink of an eye, she had already come behind Li Tianlan. Several inconspicuous but extremely hot lines of fire rushed out of her body and entangled Li Tianlan. She also directly attacked and punched Li Tianlan in the head. "Senior brother, watch out." Wang Yuetong, who was besieged, suddenly screamed. The layers of exquisite small swords around her rose and fell, and then burst out in an instant. All the small swords were blown up. The horrible sword intent roared and roared. Even if more than a dozen experts in the ice-condensing realm besieging Wang Yuetong were elites, under such a terrible outbreak 5 or 6 of them were completely crushed by the sword energy. Now is the time. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly focused. At the moment when countless exquisite small swords were blown up, all the elites besieging Wang Yuetong instinctively defended. An ice stare had already formed in front of Wang Yuetong. Behind Li Tianlan were several lines of fire and the young woman's fist, which seemed white and tender but had the power close to the thunder-shocking realm. But at the moment when the lines of fire and the fist were about to touch Li Tianlan's body had suddenly disappeared and appeared on the ice stair beside Wang Yuetong. Everything flashed by in a flash. The young woman only looked up for a moment. Beside Wang Yuetong on the ice stair, the human emperor in Li Tianlan's hand had begun to shrink to its original form. He held the metal cylinder in his hand and pulled it to both sides. In the clear sound of clanking, 2 slender double swords were directly unsheathed with the pure killing sword intent. A blazing fire lit up in the broken ice where countless small swords were blown up. In a trance, it instantly spread to the edges of the double swords. Li Tianlan held the double swords and suddenly rotated his body. Extremely blazing flames instantly soared into the sky, rushing tens of meters away and continued to spread. Li Tianlan, who was surrounded by broken ice, was surrounded by blazing fire. His rotating figure holding the sword seemed to appear beside every elite besieging Wang Yuetong. Through the blurry ice, Li Tianlan at this moment was like a scorching sun. The raging fire burned the sky. Chapter 38. As the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai and a martial arts genius with the wind vein, Wang Yuetong was one of the real core figures among the younger generation of the family. Her importance in terms of identity and potential was self-evident. She was a person who must be protected under any circumstances. In Beihai province, the most stable territory of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong would send experts to protect his baby daughter. At this time, Wang Yuetong came to Huading where the situation was chaotic and undercurrents were surging. How could he let his baby daughter be in danger? In Huading, it was the enchantress who was responsible for Wang Yuetong's safety. The enchantress was the leader of the camouflage and lurking course group in the Sky Academy. She was a senior member of the Sky Academy. Although her status was not as high as that of the principal and director, her strength at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm with room for improvement was enough for anyone in the Sky Academy to ignore her. As a core expert of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong trusted the enchantress very much. No one in the Wang family of Beihai would be worried if Wang Yuetong was handed over to her. The enchantress really did her best. Early in the morning on the first day of the holiday, not long after Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan went out, she followed them in a Hyundai. After knowing Wang Yuetong's destination, her protection range was ridiculously far. The distance between the two cars was nearly 1 kilometer. This distance was far beyond anyone's alert range. But with her speed, she could get to the scene in time to protect Wang Yuetong. In the eyes of the enchantress, this was the best protection distance. However, not long after the enchantress started on the road, she keenly noticed that someone was following the beige beetle. She paid attention to the license plate number. It was a Mercedes-Benz with a Huading local license plate. The person, like her, was extremely confident in his skills and strength. He was at least 700 or 800 meters away from Wang Yuetong's beetle. The enchantress sped up for a short while, trying to see the stalker in the Mercedes-Benz. But the Mercedes-Benz window was covered with film. Vaguely, enchantress could barely see a silhouette in long, silky blonde hair. Someone outside Zhongzhou State? The enchantress's attention was completely focused at that time, and her mood became solemn. But after thinking about it, she didn't inform Wang Xiaoyao immediately. Wang Xiaoyao was now accompanying Taoist Xian Xuanzi, who was visiting Huading. There was no room for error in this matter. It was said that Xian Xuanzi could manipulate some of the fate of Zhongzhou state. For enemies outside the country, such a figure was definitely one of the people they wanted to kill the most. Now there was a suspected killer from a foreign force trying to kill the young core of the Wang family of Beihai. Needless to say, such an organization had a big plan. Who knew whether their ultimate target was Wang Yuetong or Xian Xuanzi? If he informed Wang Xiaoyao now, there might be some trouble. It was not necessary at all. The enchantress was extremely confident in her strength. She believed that as long as it was not an expert of the invincible realm who could kill Wang Yuetong in seconds, no matter who was under the invincible realm, the enchantress was sure to keep Wang Yuetong safe. She quietly followed Wang Yuetong a little closer, keeping a distance of about 500 meters. She was even more vigilant about the Mercedes-Benz behind her. The beige Beetle drove into Garden Party, while the Hyundai driven by Enchantress was parked on the other side of the road. When they were about to enter Lanshan National Park, the Mercedes-Benz that had been following them all the way finally disappeared. The Enchantress sneered and did not look for them. Her task was to protect Wang Yuetong. After Wang Yuetong returned to the Sky Academy, it would not be too late to look for the tracker. Although it would take some time, this was Zhongzhou state. With the power of the Wang family of Beihai, as long as there was a trace, she was not afraid that she could not find the tracker. She parked the car on the side of the road not far from Garden Party and waited silently. Wang Yuetong had the positioning and alarm device of the Wang family of Beihai on her. When the device was running, the enchantress could know Wang Yuetong's movements at any time. The speed at which Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan came out was beyond the enchantress's expectation. Sitting in the car, the enchantress had just made do with breakfast. Not long after, Wang Yuetong had left Garden Party, and the speed seemed to be not slow. The enchantress raised her eyebrows in surprise and started the car. There was a small forest in the middle of the road where she and Wang Yuetong were. It was a few hundred meters wide. If they went to the exit from here, the two cars would eventually meet. The enchantress controlled the speed and followed them at a moderate speed. The two cars gradually approached the intersection, and the forest in the middle became narrower and narrower. The enchantress, who had never let down her vigilance, finally breathed a sigh of relief. But before she could finish her breath, a loud bang suddenly sounded on the other side of the road 100 meters away. At the same time, the wristwatch on the enchantress's wrist showed a red dot, which was flashing rapidly. The enchantress, whose expression changed dramatically, kicked open the car door almost instinctively. A large amount of lightning flashed in the driver's seat, and her figure had already rushed into the forest. The distance of more than 100 meters was almost no distance when an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm sprinted at full speed. A large amount of lightning filled the interior of the forest, like thunder piercing through the sky. The figure of the enchantress had almost disappeared. All along the way there was glaring and dazzling lightning. A gunshot rang out abruptly from the interior of the forest. As soon as she heard the gunshot, the enchantress knew that it was a gunshot unique to the flowing light. The power of the flowing light was not very terrifying, but it was the fastest sniper rifle nowadays. It could almost double the shooting speed of an ordinary sniper rifle, which meant that many people, even if they were experts, might be shot in the head when they could not react in time. Such a sniper rifle was especially useful for dealing with elites in the ice-condensing realm on the battlefield. Most of the experts in the ice-condensing realm were still in the process of tempering their willpower. To block the bullets of the flowing light with ice, it required extremely focused willpower and fast reaction speed. However, the shooting speed of the flowing light was extremely terrifying. With such a ballistic speed, a considerable number of experts in the ice-condensing realm could not react in time. Therefore, the flowing light sniper rifle was also called the ice-condensing killer by the people in the Dark World. The most ironic thing was that this sniper rifle, which was obviously used to deal with Wang Yuetong, was developed by the Wang family of Beihai. You're courting death. The eyes of the enchantress, who was moving forward at high speed, suddenly turned cold, and she sped up again in an instant. The direction of the gunshot came from right in front of her, which would not make her run any longer. And it would not take much time to deal with this kind of person who could only hide in the dark and shoot from the back. It would only take a wave of her hand to kill 3 to 5 snipers. The enchantress had already raised her speed to the maximum. The distance of dozens of meters was almost covered by a leap. In the blink of an eye, she had already appeared in the place where the gunshot came from. But she did not make a move. Her sprinting body suddenly stopped where it was, and her pupils suddenly contracted to the extreme. She, who looked extremely wild in the process of sprinting, instantly became extremely quiet. But at this moment, the enchantress gave people the feeling that she was several times more dangerous than when she was sprinting. This place was almost close to the roadside. Standing here, the enchantress could even clearly see Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan standing on the ice stair, as well as the dozen or so ice swords whistling in the air and the dozen or so attackers rushing out from the roadside. But she just took a hurried glance, and then focused all her attention on what was in front of her. "Who are you?" she asked slowly, taking a deep breath. Her whole state was adjusted to the peak in a short time, and her willpower was unprecedentedly focused. Right in front of her, a tall, plump, exotic woman was standing with her back to the enchantress. Her long blonde hair swayed slightly in the forest wind, and she held a flowing light sniper rifle in her hand. The woman did not seem to notice the arrival of the enchantress at all. She was watching the battlefield not far away with relish. On the battlefield, the ice swords were flying in the air. The sword intent was whistling in the air, and a ghastly sword intent like a tsunami, a huge wave and a raging tide was rapidly taking shape. "It's really beautiful," the tall woman with her back to the enchantress exclaimed in English. No one knew whether she was praising Wang Yuetong or the unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai. The enchantress's expression grew calmer. She slightly narrowed her eyes and took a step forward. At this moment she was completely in her peak state. Since the woman in front of her was unwilling to turn back, the enchantress did not bother to talk nonsense and directly planned to break through the encirclement by force. She was an assassin, and a famous assassin in Zhongzhou State. She was so famous that she was almost as famous as the top assassins in Sai City. Her desperate blow was completely sure that she could instantly kill anyone under the invincible realm. If the opponent could take this blow, there would be no enchantress in the world. But if she couldn't, the tall woman in front of her would die directly, and the enchantress would successfully break through the encirclement. She slightly narrowed her eyes. The dazzling electric light bloomed from her feet and spread all over her body. The powerful momentum firmly locked the opponent in front of her. The second step was taken. The enchantress was about to make a move. The tall woman who had been watching the battlefield in front of her seemed to finally feel the danger. She slowly turned around, holding the gun, and looked at the enchantress behind her with a surprised smile. "Don't you know me? It seems that you want to fight me with your life?" She spoke in Chinese, but her Mandarin was a little strange, with a trace of a difficult foreign accent. "It's you?" The momentum that the enchantress had accumulated to the peak subconsciously stagnated. The next second her killing intent grew colder. "You want to kill Yuetong? You were distracted just now. I could have killed you." The blonde woman was still smiling. Her Chinese was not good, so she could only express herself as briefly as possible. "But I didn't do it." From a man's point of view, she was completely a real foreign woman. She was more than 1.8 meters tall with a plump figure and a curvaceous face. Although her face was not lovely, it revealed a kind of strange temptation and glamour. Facing the horrible momentum of the enchantress, she still did not have the slightest killing intent, but there was a little playfulness in her light blue eyes. The enchantress became angrier and couldn't help but sneer. "You are a super master, but you want to kill 2 juniors. Horsewoman, do you have any shame? Why, are you going to fight with the Wang family of Beihai?" New Readers Group, 670548567. Brothers who are interested are welcome to join the group to discuss 3 chapters today. The next chapter is at 4 in the afternoon. Chapter 39. For the enchantress, she did know the European woman in front of her. Not only her, but many people also knew her. In the dark world, the European woman in front of her was really famous. She was no less famous than the enchantress, or even more famous. One of the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace, codenamed Horsewoman. She was a real expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Among the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace, Horsewoman was famous for being good at defense and protection. Now she stood in front of her, which was equivalent to a collision between a spear and a shield. Breaking through Horsewoman's blockade and entanglement? Even the enchantress was not sure. "Why do we have to fight?" Horsewoman asked softly with a smile. The enchantress froze and instantly noticed something wrong. She frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Horsewoman's appearance was too strange. Under normal circumstances, even if the Samsara wanted to kill Wang Yuetong, it would not send a famous supermaster to do it in person. Sending some men of sacrifice to do it secretly was the best way. Even if they failed, they did not have to worry about being exposed. If the Samsara wanted to provoke the Wang family of Beihai, they would not choose Wang Yuetong as the starting point. Since they had already sent a supermaster, wouldn't it be more appropriate to directly target Wang Xingxiao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai? Her appearance was a little strange no matter how she looked at it. The enchantress frowned tightly. In her heart, she was willing to believe that this had nothing to do with the Samsara. Otherwise, if Horsewoman really wanted to kill Wang Yuetong, the Wang family of Beihai would definitely fight back against the Samsara immediately, regardless of the result today. This was tantamount to a huge conflict in the Dark World. The whole Dark World would be in turmoil. In the Dark World, the Samsara Palace was a very strange organization. No one could even tell when they were founded. It was about 10 years ago that the 12 Supermasters began to go their own way with great fanfare. But earlier, there were still traces of the Samsara Palace's activities. About 5 or 6 years ago, the 12 Supermasters of the Samsara Palace completely gathered together, and the Samsara Palace leaped to become the top force in the Dark World. The mysterious Palace Master of the Samsara Palace, who had only fought once a few years ago, was definitely an expert in the invincible realm. Otherwise, he would not have been able to suppress so many supermasters at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. At present, among all the superpowers in the Dark World, the Samsara Palace had the most experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. But except for a few exposed supermasters, people knew nothing about the other situation of the Samsara. If the Wang family of Beihai started a war with such a mysterious force, it would have too little information. At that time, there would be endless variables. For the Wang family of Beihai, it would not be a good thing whether it won or lost. Nothing much. Horsewoman shook her head and said, "You've been guarding against me since I showed up today. You didn't even notice the person who was following Wang Yuetong. I'm helpless. Why are you guarding against me? If you were following Yuetong, you wouldn't have shown up here. Why should I guard against you?" The enchantress sneered, but compared to her previous murderous look, her attitude was much gentler. In a hurry, she glanced at Wang Yuetong on the battlefield. The sword torrent had taken shape. Wang Yuetong should be able to cope with it for a while. The enchantress was slightly relieved and then focused on Horsewoman. To some extent, the Wang family of Beihai and the Samsara Palace had some connections. If Horsewoman hadn't come to kill Wang Yuetong today, the two might have cooperated. Then why did you follow Wang Yuetong? Horsewoman's voice was soft, which was very inconsistent with her bold and gorgeous appearance. But the enchantress would not be deceived by these illusions. She said coldly, "I wasn't following her. I was protecting her. I'm from the Wang family of Beihai. Is it wrong to protect our little princess?" "I was protecting her too." Horsewoman threw away the gun in her hand and said calmly. She turned around again as if she was not afraid of the enchantress's sneak attack at all. She looked at the battlefield. Unlike the enchantress was looking at Wang Yuetong, while her eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan. The enchantress was slightly stunned and then understood. "You were protecting Li Tianlan?" She looked at the gun that Horsewoman had left on the ground and found that there was a piece of black ash next to the sniper rifle. Beside the sniper rifle there was a piece of black ash. If the shape was put together, it could barely be seen that it was a human shape. There was no doubt that it was the sniper who had just fired. The suspicion in the enchantress's heart was slightly reduced. She took a deep breath and said softly, "Li Tianlan has something to do with your Samsara. He really hides his strength." "This is the boss's order," Horsewoman said calmly. "Qin Weibai? What's the relationship between Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai?" The enchantress asked subconsciously. Whether in the Samsara Palace or in the Wang family of Beihai, Qin Weibai was a very special and sensitive person. The only time that the mysterious palace master of the Samsara Palace took action in recent years was when she killed an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm in England. She also saved a delicate and weak Zhongzhou state woman who didn't know martial arts from the demonis who dominated Europe. At that time the woman was still a young girl. Later, the mysterious palace master recognized the young girl as his younger sister. The young girl's status in the Samsara Palace soared, and the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace were formally formed. In the current Samsara Palace, many aspects of intelligence showed that the young girl still didn't know martial arts, but she had become a figure in the Samsara Palace second only to the palace master. And that young girl back then was the current Qin Weibai. From the way Horsewoman called her boss, it was enough to show the status between the super masters of the Samsara Palace and Qin Weibai. Many big shots in the dark world guessed that Qin Weibai might be the military counselor of the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace. A military counselor didn't need to be proficient in martial arts. He just needed to be able to give advice. Some people even said that Qin Weibai ranked first among the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace, and her mystery was second only to the palace master of the Samsara Palace. Some people also guessed that the palace master of the Samsara Palace coveted Qin Weibai's beauty, so she gave her such great power. However, this kind of saying was absolutely forbidden in the Wang family of Beihai. It was all because of Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Xiaoyao's obsession with Qin Weibai had almost reached the point of losing his mind. For several years, no matter how cold Qin Weibai's words were, he never lost his patience and persisted in pursuing her. Wang Xiaoyao did not hesitate to solve some things that Qin Weibai or the Samsara Palace couldn't intervene in Zhongzhou state. He did not hesitate to kill some flies around her. For this, he even caused a lot of trouble. Wang Qianzong tried to persuade him, but it was useless. Other people in the Wang family of Beihai also tried to persuade him, but it was useless. The enchantress lived in Huading all year round, so she knew about the progress of Wang Xiaoyao's pursuit of Qin Weibai in recent years. It was said that the two had lunched together in the past 4 years and they talked about business. Even so, Wang Xiaoyao was still infatuated with her. Unfortunately, all his sincerity was thrown into the garbage heap by Qin Weibai. Now hearing Horsewoman say that Qin Weibai actually asked her to secretly protect Li Tianlan, the enchantress had mixed feelings. She felt that Wang Xiaoyao's efforts were not worth it. Horsewoman was the super master of the Samsara Palace. Even if Qin Weibai's status was higher than hers, she could protect Qin Weibai herself. Now that she had to protect Li Tianlan, Horsewoman might not feel very comfortable. From this, it could be seen how important Li Tianlan was to Qin Weibai. The enchantress had a headache, but she also knew that she would never get any answer from the question she asked Horsewoman. She just said indifferently, "Since our goals are basically the same, why haven't you made a move yet?" As she spoke, she was about to step out and rush to the battlefield. Horsewoman suddenly stretched out her hand, and a bright electric light kept jumping in her palm. The electric light was small, but as soon as it appeared, even the nearby air was extremely distorted. The electric light stopped in front of the enchantress. Horsewoman was expressionless. "You can't go." "What do you mean?" The enchantress's eyes suddenly became cold. "Don't you think it's better to let Li Tianlan save the damsel in distress? I know the unique skills of the Wang family of Beihai. Your unique skills are almost flawless, but they are full of shortcomings. For hundreds of years, you have only pursued one thing, and that is the ultimate explosive force. In the shortest time, you have to completely and unreservedly vent all your combat effectiveness. This is the martial arts purpose of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Yuedong's move is called Sword Frenzy. But how long can she hold on in the face of the siege of more than a dozen elites? When her sword momentum falls, she will be in danger. Isn't it better for us to see Li Tianlan's performance together?" The knight chuckled and stated his purpose with utmost sincerity. Li Tianlan is still in the qi-controlling realm. Not to mention that the dozen elites besieging Yuetong are close to or have reached the peak of the ice-condensing realm. Even the young man and woman are very likely to be in the fire-flaming realm. "You want Li Tianlan to save the damsel in distress?" The enchantress questioned coldly. "In any case, I can keep them alive. There is no harm in trying." Horsewoman smiled. The corner of the enchantress's mouth twitched. Horsewoman was best at defense and protection. With her ability, she could indeed keep Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan alive, but the enchantress didn't think it was necessary for Li Tianlan to save the damsel in distress. There was something wrong between Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan. At the end of the maneuver, many people had seen it. If Li Tianlan really succeeded in saving the damsel in distress, what would Wang Yuedong's maiden mind be like? If the two were involved, plus Qin Weibai and Wang Xiaoyao, it would be too messy. The enchantress couldn't let that happen. Facing the jumping lightning, the enchantress took a step forward and said calmly, "Get out of the way. You can't get through." Horsewoman said in an old-fashioned tone, with no smile on her beautiful face. "You and I have our own task. Don't play with fire." "It doesn't matter." "Horsewoman, do you have to fight to the death?" The enchantress's eyes grew sharper. Her eyes could be said to be the sexiest and most charming part of her, but at this moment, there was a kind of desperate determination. Horsewoman looked at her seriously and suddenly laughed. "You can attack me, but you can't fight to the death." "Not only me, but military counselor is also nearby. The enchantress's face changed. Military counselor, one of the 12 super masters of samsara. Qin Weibai was also a mysterious character. Otherwise, no one would have regarded Qin Weibai as a military counselor. If the military counselor was really here at this time, it meant that the rumor about Qin Weibai was completely nonsense. Military counselor could appear on this battlefield. How could he not know martial arts? Perhaps his real combat capability was no less than horsewoman's. And 2 super masters of samsara protected Li Tianlan together. How willful would Qin Weibai be? There was also Flaming Fire who followed Qin Weibai. After careful calculation, 3 of the 12 super masters of samsara appeared in Zhongzhou state. Qin Weibai was attentive to Li Tianlan, and the master of Samsara Palace seemed to be extremely attentive to his baby sister. Are you threatening me? The enchantress took a deep breath, and her plump chest rose and fell slightly. She sneered and said, "Don't forget this is Zhongzhou state. What is your samsara in Zhongzhou state? Do you really think your palace master is invincible? Today, whether it's me or Yuatong, if something happens, do you think your palace master can really protect himself under the human emperor?" Horsewoman's smile slowly faded, and her eyes became cold. She glanced at the enchantress and said coldly, "If our palace master goes east to Zhongzhou state, he may be able to borrow a murderous weapon. I know you have been secretly colluding with the academics in recent years, but Sai City is not a dog of the academics. Situ Tsangyue can control the murderous weapon Setting Sun in Zhongzhou state, but Setting Sun is related to the fate of the country. Do you think she will lend Setting Sun to your palace master? You're daydreaming." The enchantress's tone became more and more gloomy. Horsewoman stopped talking and just watched the battle closely. On the battlefield, Wang Yuetong's sharp scream suddenly sounded. "Senior brother, watch out." The enchantress's expression changed dramatically, and the lightning rose again. Wang Yuetong, who was besieged by many people, detonated her sword momentum before it reached its peak. The sword energy was like a tide. The whole battlefield suddenly became turbulent. But once the turbulent waves passed, Wang Yuetong was absolutely in danger. On the other side of the battlefield, Li Tianlan was approaching. Behind him, the figure of the young woman was less than 2 meters away from him. It was a matter of life and death. Horsewoman and the enchantress rushed forward almost at the same time, and then stopped at the same time, looking shocked. In their sight, Li Tianlan, who was about to suffer a fatal attack, suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already beside Wang Yuetong. In an instant, the fire rose to the sky and the sword light flew. The surging sword intent broke out, and the battlefield mixed with broken ice was blurred. But in the blurred scene, there was a sudden storm and the rising sun. No one could see Li Tianlan's sword, but Horsewoman and the enchantress clearly felt an extremely crazy and vast sword intent spinning wildly in the battlefield. The sword light rushed to the sky, almost tearing the sky apart. At this moment, neither Horsewoman nor the enchantress cared about the fact that Li Tianlan had re-entered the fire-flaming realm. They were only attracted by the unique skill that Li Tianlan seemed to have hidden intentionally or unintentionally. Such a powerful unique skill really had a kind of invincible demeanor. It was simply, such a sword move can be called the extreme of the sword. The enchantress stopped and said in a low voice after 2 seconds of silence. Then she felt that the words were a little exaggerated, so she shook her head and said, "No, it's the extreme of the fire-flaming realm." Horsewoman just silently looked at the flamboyant fire that burned the sky like the sun, and praised for the second time, "It's really beautiful." Chapter 40. No one could see Li Tianlan's sword move clearly. No one could describe it because no one could see it clearly. The sharp sword light whistled wildly. At this moment, Li Tianlan was surrounded by fire. The extremely sharp and strong sword intent was ancient and distant, as if it had connected heaven and earth, making it irresistible. "No." The young woman who failed to kill raised her head and looked at the fire rising in the battlefield. Her face changed dramatically, and there was even a hint of fear in her voice. "No." In the center of the fire, Li Tianlan's expression was cold, but his pupils were demonic blood red. 2 slender long swords turned with his body, and there were countless shadows on the battlefield in an instant. The raging fire shrank to the limit. In just a second it expanded to the limit again. The sound of the expanding fire rang in everyone's ears. Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong's figures had almost completely disappeared, leaving only a huge fireball, roaring and exploding. Large waves of fire spread wildly with Li Tianlan as the center. More than a dozen ice-condensing realm elites who had besieged Wang Yuetong disappeared in the fire before they could even scream. Not to mention corpses, not even ashes were left. What a domineering sword move. Near the battlefield, Horsewoman and Enchantress, who were ready to take action at any time, said in unison. They had tried their best to overestimate the power of this sword move, but they still couldn't believe it when they saw it with their own eyes. Although the person who made the move was still in the fire-flaming realm in terms of power, this sword move might have completely exceeded the scope of the fire-flaming realm, with a taste of thunder. The extreme of the fire-flaming realm. Horsewoman narrowed her eyes and said softly, "Worthy of the name." Enchantress's face changed and she couldn't speak for a while. All the unique skills of the Wang family of Beihai were about extreme explosive power, which was well known in the dark world. Their patriarch, Wang Tianzong, was the #1 expert in Zhongzhou state. Even without the human emperor, he deserved to be #1. There were few people in the world who could withstand his instant explosive power. But now Li Tianlan's sword move made Enchantress's scalp tingle. This sword move was also pursuing extreme explosive power. Although it was not the extreme way of the Wang family of Beihai in terms of power, it was not much worse than the unique skills of the Wang family of Beihai. Such a figure was now involved with a behemoth like the Samsara Palace. If they became enemies in the future, they would definitely be strong enemies of the Wang family of Beihai. The Enchantress hesitated for a moment before deciding not to move. Li Tianlan's sword strike could be said to be peerlessly powerful. With her eyes, she could naturally see that he was still forcibly improving his realm. This meant that Li Tianlan had at least reached the fire-flaming realm before. But according to the data, Li Tianlan was only 19 years old now. A young man with wind and thunder veins who had reached the fire-flaming realm before the age of 19 was as talented as Wang Xingxiao of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was a freshman who could kill Lu Xiaowei in the ice-condensing realm. Now that he was forced to the fire-flaming realm, even if she showed up now, it would be meaningless. It was better to hide in the dark and see what other trump cards Li Tianlan had. The frost melted. The storm stilled. The flames dispersed. Li Tianlan appeared in the field again with 2 swords in his hands. Wang Yuetong was not hurt except that her face was pale. Obviously, although Li Tianlan's sword strike was powerful, he controlled it very well and did not affect her at all. Less than 10 meters in front of them were 2 young men and women in the fire-flaming realm. At this moment, both of them were dumbfounded. They looked at the empty scene with incredulity on their faces. Gone, everything was gone. After that sword strike, more than a dozen elites who had just besieged Wang Yuetong seemed to have never existed, and no trace of them could be found. Where are they? The young woman looked at the scene in front of her and subconsciously murmured to herself. The road to hell is long. I think they are still waiting for you. They can't be far away. Li Tianlan held his sword, and his whole body exuded a kind of extremely crazy coldness and killing intent. At this time he was different from the calmness in the Sky Academy. Now, there was only one feeling that Li Tianlan gave people. Dangerous. Absolutely dangerous. How dare you kill them? The young woman suddenly raised her head and looked at Li Tianlan with hatred in her eyes. There was a trace of ruthlessness in her angry expression. Today's action squadron was the painstaking effort of the couple for many years. 18 experts at the peak of the ice-condensing realm or close to the peak of the ice-condensing realm, plus the couple, made up a squadron. She was #1 and the young man was #2. The 18 elites could be said to be their most precious wealth, and also the capital for them to gain a foothold in the organization. But now all the capital was gone and they were killed by a sword strike. #1's heart seemed to be torn apart, and the pain and despair even made her unable to breathe for a moment. Damn you! She stared at Li Tianlan in front of her and gritted her teeth. Blood flowed down the corner of her mouth, and her expression was distorted. Her charming face was as ferocious as a ghost at this time. The young man, #2, stood beside #1 with a crazy look in his eyes. He opened his mouth a few times and his voice was hoarse. He turned out to be a mute. A mute? Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat, and he glanced at the pale Wang Yuetong. To trace the origin of these people, this mute might be an obvious feature. Do we need to keep him alive? I don't have much time. Li Tianlan frowned and suddenly asked in a low voice. Wang Yuetong found that as Li Tianlan spoke, the red blood was flowing down the corner of his mouth, and his face seemed to become a little twisted. Wang Yuetong suddenly understood what was going on, and she also knew that Li Tianlan's peak state was in the fire-flaming realm. It was scary to hear that a man who was less than 19 years old in the fire-flaming realm and possessed the wind and thunder veins. But for some reason, Li Tianlan's strength had fallen to the bottom. Now it was a matter of life and death, and he could force himself to return to his peak state. But the pain of bearing the power of the fire-flaming realm with the strength of the chi-controlling realm was like thousands of arrows piercing his heart every minute and second, and it was worse than death. Even if Li Tianlan was strong-willed, how long could he stay in the fire-flaming realm? This was different from when he was in the ice-condensing realm. In his current state, 3 to 5 minutes was his limit. No, we can't get anything out of him, Wang Yuetong said quickly, and then she asked, Senior brother, how are you? Li Tianlan smiled, shook his head slightly and turned around directly. His eyes suddenly became demonic and dead. Number 1 and number 2 in front of him were the attackers. They were angry because their men were killed, and because Li Tianlan directly wiped out the foundation of their future foothold in the organization. But Li Tianlan had more reason to be angry. The price of forcibly upgrading to the fire-flaming realm was unimaginable. The injury and pain were secondary. In this way, the squeeze on his future potential was the most fatal. The fire-flaming realm was a very special realm for him. This forcible upgrade could only last a few minutes, but it would take at least one more year when he really stepped into the fire-flaming realm and broke through to the thunder-shocking realm in the future, and it might not necessarily achieve the desired effect. 1 year. This price was almost unbearable for him. Li Tianlan closed his eyes and felt the pain in his body. The corner of his mouth twitched, revealing an extremely twisted smile. The temperature in front of him rose instantly. Number 1 and number 2 attacked at the same time, trying their best. Their elites were all lost. Only by completing the task could they continue to survive in the organization and even have a chance to regain their foothold. If they failed the task and suffered such a heavy loss, even if they went back, they would probably live a life worse than death. So they had to kill Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan paid such a price to enter the fire-flaming realm. If he didn't offer 2 decent heads to the sword, he could die of grievance, which would affect his state of mind and will. For him, the 2 in front of him also had to die. The fire rose. Number 1 and number 2 moved at the same time, and the fire around them completely merged. Suddenly, there was a trace of electric light floating in the fire. Watch out. Wang Yuetong's pupils contracted instantly. Their martial arts obviously had a lot in common, which was almost the same as Lu Dongchao and Lu Dongyu in the Sky Academy. When they joined forces, their power was doubled. In this state, number 1 and number 2 were almost one person, and their combat strength was almost equal to that of an expert who had just entered the thunder-shocking realm. The electric light kept floating in the fire, and Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong were surrounded by burning flames. At this point, Li Tianlan had no choice but to move forward. As long as he retreated a little, the sword light floating in the fire would probably fall on him. At that time, both he and Wang Yuetong would be burnt to a crisp in an instant. Number 1's expression had calmed down. She and number 2 moved at the same time, less than 10 meters away. They walked very slowly, but with every step they took, the electric light in the fire became more dazzling. Li Tianlan's eyes had narrowed into a line. In the blazing fire, he suddenly said in a low voice, "Help me." Wang Yuetong was slightly stunned. Thinking of the scene in the maze of the entrance maneuver, when facing Lu Xiaowei, he refused to use his unique skills. Wang Yuetong's heart skipped a beat and she raised her hand again. Countless intricate ice swords rose from her body and exploded in an instant. The air that was burning with flames suddenly had a hint of coldness. Ice and fire blended together. Under the refraction of the sun, everything became blurred again. Li Tianlan suddenly closed the slender swords in his hands. The moment the 2 swords came together, a crisp sound was heard as the 2 swords combined into one. It was a broadsword with an extremely strange shape and even 2 sword tips. Li Tianlan held the hilt with both hands and raised the sword to his eyebrows. In an instant, the sword energy was like a sea, layer upon layer, surging as if it was endless. The sword had not been drawn, but the sword energy was everywhere. The fire on number 1 and number 2 was still flowing, burning around Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. But as Li Tianlan raised the sword, all the fire shook violently as if it was going to be extinguished. Even the electric light seemed to shake violently. Li Tianlan looked calm, but his scarlet pupils became more and more demonic, like dripping blood. In the Li family's martial arts and the unique skills he had practiced, the sword just now had a famous name, but now he didn't know how many people still remembered it. It was called the 8th blade. The 8th blade burned the sky. And now this sword was the 9th blade. The 9th blade of dusk. The sword edge in Li Tianlan's hand vibrated, and the fire burning around him suddenly swayed more and more violently, as if it would be extinguished at any time. Number 1 and Number 2's expressions changed. But before they took the initiative to attack, Li Tianlan had directly drawn his sword. His body didn't seem to move, but he directly appeared in front of the two, raised the long sword high and directly chopped down. All the fire went out in an instant. Between Number 1 and Number 2, there was only a faint but extremely terrifying electric light. The long sword chopped down from above. At first there was silence. A horrible whistling sound suddenly broke out in the process of the sword edge downward. Everywhere was moving. With Li Tianlan as the center, the air within dozens of meters around him was shaking and twisting violently. The fire rose from dozens of meters in all directions, all gathered toward Li Tianlan, and then disappeared, but the surrounding temperature was rising sharply. Chapter 41. An extreme sense of danger shrouded her heart. Number 1 could no longer hold it in and screamed. The electric light that was floating around her and Number 2 suddenly leaped up and streaked across the dim environment before them, colliding with the long sword that was falling down from the sky. The dim environment in front of them suddenly dissipated. Intense flames suddenly burst out, forming a continuous stretch, all of them surging towards Number 1 and Number 2 in front of them. Number 1 and Number 2 screamed to defend themselves. For a moment the fire was endless. The flames of the two sides were entangled and everything around them was pure heat. Only a slender pair of swords surrounded by lightning rushed to the sky, flying higher and higher. Seeing this scene clearly, Number 1's eyes were filled with despair. Li Tianlan's combat strength was far beyond her imagination. But what made it more difficult for her to understand was the weapon in Li Tianlan's hand. She and Number 2's full-force attack turned into lightning, which was almost a fatal blow. As long as the lightning could touch Li Tianlan or the long sword in his hand, the power of the lightning could kill Li Tianlan in an instant. Of course, she could also see that Li Tianlan was forcibly raising his realm. But when his realm was raised to the fire-flaming realm, his physical strength could not keep up. Under the full-force attack of her and Number 2, Li Tianlan had no reason to survive. But the moment when the lightning was about to touch the long sword in Li Tianlan's hand, the long sword in Li Tianlan's hand instantly disintegrated and once again turned into two slender swords. One was held tightly in his hand. As for the other one, it flew high up into the sky with the help of the lightning. Li Tianlan, who was not attacked by Number 1 and Number 2 at all, held the long sword in his hand and swept it across the battlefield full of fire. The 10th blade. Boundless. All the flames were extinguished by the sword, and only a vast sword chi swept towards Number 1 and Number 2's bodies along with the sword's edge. The sword energy was majestic, like raging fire, like thunder, like the thick earth of the sky, like all the phenomena in the world. The 10th blade was boundless. In the martial arts that Li Tianlan cultivated, it was the most destructive sword in the fire-flaming realm. In a desperate battle, its power surpassed that of the 8th blade of sky burning and the 9th blade of eventide. Number 1 screamed again. Under this sword, all her feelings seemed to have disappeared, and the only thing she could feel was death. At the moment of life and death, she suddenly turned around and rushed directly to her husband, Number 2. The distance between the two of them was extremely close. With just a turn, Number 1 was already in Number 2's arms. A thick ice wall appeared behind her, and within the ice wall, raging flames raged. The look of despair on Number 1's face was still the same, but the look in her eyes had softened. The deadly flash of the sword behind her seemed to have disappeared from her mind. She just looked at Number 2's face as if she wanted to carve this face she had known for so many years into her soul. The long sword and the sword chi swept across. The ice wall instantly shattered and the flames disappeared. The sharp edge of the sword flashed across Number 1's waist. Blood sprayed everywhere. Number 2 felt the weight in his arms lighten. Looking at his wife's lifeless eyes, he opened his mouth wide. But as a mute, before he could scream, Li Tianlan's figure flashed and appeared directly behind him. Without any hesitation, he raised his sword and pierced it into Number 2's back. What Number 1 did at the last moment was sentimental, but it was clearly meaningless. The long sword pierced in and then pulled out. Li Tianlan looked at Number 2, who had fallen to the ground with his wife's upper body in his arms. His face was full of chilling indifference. Resolute, decisive, ruthless, mysterious, and powerful. Enchantress, who saw all this, felt her scalp go numb. In this state, Li Tianlan might not be a threat to her now, but everything he had shown had already made Enchantress's hair stand on end. The boss really didn't choose the wrong person. Horsewoman was silent for a while. She suddenly smiled, glanced at Wang Yuetong and continued, "It seems that the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai didn't choose the wrong person either." Enchantress's expression changed. Looking at Wang Yuetong, whose eyes were blank and blurred, she sighed in her heart, and her face became extremely ugly. The long sword that had been flying in the air finally fell back. Along with the long sword, Li Tianlan's extremely strong aura also fell. Almost in the blink of an eye, his strength fell from the fire-flaming realm to the chi-controlling realm. His face was pale. With the help of Wang Yuetong, he picked up the long sword that had fallen to the ground. After gathering the human emperor, he put it back into his sleeve. After doing all this, Li Tianlan finally couldn't hold it anymore. He directly sat on the ground, panting violently. As he panted, a large mouthful of blood gushed out of his mouth, and he couldn't stop it at all. "Senior brother?" Wang Yuetong's frightened voice sounded with a sobbing tone. She held Li Tianlan tightly in her arms and covered Li Tianlan's mouth with one hand. Big drops of tears fell from her eyes, and her body trembled more violently than Li Tianlan's. "Senior brother, don't scare me." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong's tender white palm that was stained with his blood. He closed his mouth tightly and swallowed the blood back, one mouthful at a time. He shook his head at Wang Yuetong, his face calm, but he couldn't speak. Wang Yuetong's little face was covered with tears. Until now, she seemed to wake up from a dream. She quickly tore off a few buttons on her clothes, crushed them, and poured several kinds of powder from the buttons. "Senior brother, eat it. It's good for your injury." Li Tianlan glanced at her, opened his mouth, and let Wang Yuetong pour the powder into his mouth. Then he swallowed it with blood. Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlan in her arms and continued to cry, like a little tabby cat that had just been abandoned by its owner. "That's the blessing potion of our Wang family of Beihai. At worst, it can suppress Li Tianlan's injury." In the woods, the enchantress looked at Horsewoman, who was obviously hesitant, and said in a calm tone. Horsewoman's face visibly relaxed when she heard that. Without hesitation she said flatly, "Goodbye." It was not that she couldn't appear in front of Li Tianlan, but that this place was very close to the garden party. Wang Xiaoyao and other experts of the Wang family of Beihai were probably coming soon. Horsewoman's action of stopping the enchantress from helping Li Tianlan was obviously not pleasing to the Wang family of Beihai. If she didn't leave at this time with Wang Xiaoyao's domineering character, it was inevitable that there would be a conflict after he learned the whole story. When Horsewoman's figure completely disappeared, the enchantress sighed and slowly walked out of the woods. Wang Yuetong, who was holding Li Tianlan and sobbing, was stunned when she saw the enchantress. Then she wiped her tears and turned her head to the side with a straight face. "What's wrong? Are you angry with Sixth Sister?" The enchantress had mixed feelings, but she still came to Wang Yuetong with a smiling face. Wang Yuetong shook her head and said nothing. The enchantress felt bitter inside. She glanced at Li Tianlan, whose face was gradually calming down, and said softly, "Tianlan, are you feeling better?" "It's not a big deal." Li Tianlan looked calm. As he opened his mouth, blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. "Thank you for your concern, teacher. Didn't I say to call me Sixth Sister from now on?" The enchantress raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Tianlan, who still looked calm. Her eyes flickered, and she suddenly said playfully, "Tianlan, with your strength, if you want to leave, I'm afraid those people just now can't stop you, and you don't have to pay such a big price to save Yuetong. Tell me, why do you risk your life for our little princess? Do you like her?" "Sixth Sister." Wang Yuetong's face, which was about to cry, turned red and subconsciously held Li Tianlan in her arms. Li Tianlan was stunned and sat up from Wang Yuetong's arms. He said flatly, "This is what I owe Wang Yuetong." The enchantress and Wang Yuetong were stunned at the same time. "Is it just because of this? If so, no matter how much you owe her before, you have paid it back today. What will you do in the future?" The enchantress asked again without batting an eyelid. "In the future?" Li Tianlan glanced at the enchantress. The enchantress's charming eyes were so deep that people couldn't see what she was thinking. "What future?" Li Tianlan laughed at himself. He struggled to stand up, looked at the pale and nervous Wang Yuetong and said softly, "From now on, you and I don't owe each other anything." He nodded and turned to leave directly. Wang Yuetong sat where she was as if she had been struck by lightning. It was not until Li Tianlan walked nearly 10 meters away that she said in a trembling voice, "What do you mean?" Li Tianlan didn't answer, nor did he look back. Since the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had different paths, it was the best choice for him and Wang Yuetong to be strangers in the future. He walked silently and staggered a little, but he kept moving forward. In Wang Yuetong's eyes, he was getting farther and farther away. Looking at his back, Wang Yuetong could no longer hold back her tears, which had already been stopped, and they gushed out. She suddenly stood up, looked at Li Tianlan and was about to chase after him, but was pulled by the enchantress, whose eyes were a little cold. Wang Yuetong struggled with all her strength, but she couldn't break free. She cried more and more sadly. Looking at Li Tianlan's figure getting farther and farther away, she cried again, "What do you mean? Li Tianlan, tell me, answer me." Chapter 42. Even though he took the healing medicine of the Wang family of Beihai immediately after the war and managed to suppress his injury, it did not mean that his internal injury did not exist. Before school started, he risked his life with Qin Ke. In the entrance maneuver, he risked his life with Lu Xiaowei. Today he risked his life with two Fire Flaming Realm experts who came out of nowhere for Wang Yuetong. The three fights were against different enemies. But for Li Tianlan, they were all battles that he needed to go all out. As a result, his injuries piled up again and again. Yesterday's healing potion and life-prolonging potion might have been in vain. After today's battle, his injuries were not light but serious. Even though he had forcibly entered the Fire Flaming Realm for only a few minutes, the injuries left on him would take him months or even longer to recover. In the Sky Academy with a fierce competitive atmosphere, Li Tianlan's realm was not high. Now that he was injured, it was obvious how difficult the situation would be during this period of time. But Li Tianlan did not regret it. As he said to the enchantress, everything he did today was because he owed Wang Yuetong a favor. The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai really had no bad intentions towards him. She cooperated with him to kill Lu Dongchao and exchanged a bottle of healing medicine for him with the credits she got from the first place in the maneuver, along with the longevity medicine produced by the Wang family of Beihai. These were all favors. In addition, she met Xian Xuanzi, a demi-immortal, today. It could be seen that Wang Yuetong was indeed helping him. From Wang Yuetong's standpoint, she might hope that he could join the Wang family of Beihai and make the Wang family of Beihai stronger after he entered the invincible realm. But it could not be said that Wang Yuetong's approach was wrong. With her identity, it was natural for her to have such an idea. And joining the Wang family of Beihai, for most people, was tantamount to a path to heaven. It was not a bad thing at all. What's more, some of them might become the son-in-law of the Wang family of Beihai, which was like a pie falling from the sky. But such a path was not suitable for Li Tianlan. He did not hate the Wang family of Beihai for standing by when the Li family was destroyed many years ago. But in the future, under his leadership, even if the Li family would not treat the Wang family of Beihai as an enemy, it would never advance or retreat with them again. And today the Wang family of Beihai no longer needed a Li family that advanced or retreated with them. In this case, what could he get in the end if he was entangled with Wang Yuetong? He silently accepted Wang Yuetong's help. When his identity was exposed, not only would he be looked down upon by the Wang family of Beihai, even Wang Yuetong would have a feeling of being used and cheated. If they couldn't be friends, they might even become enemies with personal grievances. These were not what Li Tianlan wanted. He was a young man who had just come out of the deep mountains and forests. He had some ability and was not stupid, but he had no connections and experience. What he feared most was to get entangled with these seemingly aloof big forces. There were too many human relationship traps, and after a long time, they could entangle him to death. Wang Yuetong had no bad intentions, but who could tell what the Wang family of Beihai was up to? There was a clear distinction. It was better to draw a clear line between them. Now that he had saved Wang Yuetong once, they were even. He could get away as soon as possible, which was exactly what Li Tianlan wanted. Leaving the enchantress and Wang Yuetong behind, Li Tianlan went down the mountain alone in silence. His injury was temporarily suppressed, but his body became a little weak with the exhaustion of strength. He was already panting after walking less than a kilometer. Fortunately, this part of the road was downhill, which saved him a lot of effort. While moving forward, Li Tianlan took out his mobile phone and dialed Yu Qingyan's number again. While waiting for the phone to be connected, he suddenly remembered Xian Xuanzi's words. Xian Xuanzi said that he had just passed the life and death tribulation, and the next thing was the sea in the sky. Well, the sea in the sky. Li Tianlan felt his injury, laughed at himself and muttered to himself, "The sea in the sky, my ass." Who's ass? On the other end of the phone it was still Yu Donglai who answered the phone. He heard the last few words of Li Tianlan and said subconsciously, "Nothing." Li Tianlan smiled bitterly, sat down on the side of the road and said, "Senior Yu, I'm a little injured. Can you ask Qingyan to pick me up? I'm afraid I can't get a taxi in my current condition." "What's going on?" Yu Donglai's tone suddenly became serious. Before Li Tianlan finished, he said directly, "Where are you? Qingyan is still cooking, I'll pick you up myself." "Is the injury serious? Is Wang Yuatong all right?" Whether it was Li Tianlan, who was mediocre in his eyes but reckless, or Li Tianlan, who had infinite potential and amazing combat capability in Yu Donglai's heart, there was one thing that had never changed. That was, he had never regarded Li Tianlan as an outsider. Li Tianlan had proved his own potential. In Yu Donglai's eyes, his future was almost as important as that of his granddaughter Yu Qingyan. On his future road, Yu Donglai was willing to do his best to escort him, even at the cost of his own life. So when he heard that Li Tianlan was injured, the old man suddenly couldn't sit still. "I'm fine, Wang Yuatong is also fine, but there's no car." Li Tianlan said his location with a bitter smile. Yu Donglai didn't talk nonsense with him at all. After hanging up the phone, he directly drove away. In Li Tianlan's impression, Lanshan National Park was at least dozens of kilometers away from Yu's private restaurant. Considering the traffic situation in Huading at this time, he thought it would take a long time. But in fact, in less than 40 minutes, a black Audi stopped beside him. The window rolled down and Yu Donglai directly said, "Boy, get in." Li Tianlan dragged his heavy and weak body into the passenger seat, fastened his seat belt casually and said, "So fast. I'm in a hurry. Who knows if someone will attack you during this time. I ran a few red lights on the road, but it's not a big deal." Yu Donglai shook his head. He was old, but his actions were extremely straightforward. He skillfully turned the car around, and the Audi went straight down the mountain. "What's the matter with Wang Yuatong?" Yu Donglai drove the car. After the assassination, it was normal that Wang Yuatong was not there. But when Li Tianlan was seriously injured, the Wang family of Beihai didn't make any arrangements and let him sit here and wait alone, which was not in line with the style of the Wang family of Beihai. As the leading wealthy family in Zhongzhou State, for many years, countless people had been angry at the strength and domineering of the Wang family of Beihai. But that was just the silent criticism from different standpoints. In terms of normal human relations, the Wang family of Beihai would hardly let people find any fault. Li Tianlan shook his head and said softly, "I can't bear too much affection. I just don't owe each other anything. That's the best result." Yu Donglai was slightly stunned. He subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan with a serious look. In his sight, Li Tianlan's expression was calm, without frustration, regret, or unwillingness. The sunlight outside the window shone into the car. Li Tianlan tightly pursed his lips and looked firm. Yu Donglai sighed softly. The case of treason caused heavy losses to Zhongzhou State and also hurt the Southeast Group. At the time of the incident, the Wang family of Beihai was indeed facing a crisis. It was reasonable for them not to take action. There was nothing to say. What made it hard for these old people to let go was the rapid silence after the uproar of the Wang family of Beihai after the case of treason. After many years, people like Yu Donglai, who used to be part of the game, had become outsiders. But Li Tianlan's identity as a part of the game could not be changed. His attitude toward the Wang family of Beihai was even related to whether he had a narrow escape or a narrow escape. Thinking of this, Yu Donglai felt that he needed to persuade him. "Boy, do you have a knot in your heart that is hard to untie?" To the Wang family of Beihai. "Every man for himself, and heaven and earth destroy him." Li Tianlan smiled. "There's nothing to say. But it has happened. The Wang family of Beihai and the Li family can't go back." He looked at the prosperous scenery outside the window and muttered to himself, "We don't owe each other anything. We don't owe each other anything." This was not only about him and Wang Yuatong. In his heart, it was the best that the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai could do this. Yu Donglai shook his head and took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He handed one to Li Tianlan and lit one for himself. The Audi shuttled through the traffic unhurriedly. Yu Donglai took a big drag on the cigarette and exhaled the smoke. Suddenly, his eyes became firm. "Boy, I'll let Qingyan follow you from now on. This girl is a little weak, but her means are not bad and her talent is also passable. She can hone herself in the Sky Academy and see more of the sinister people's hearts. Then she can wear off her weak temper. It won't be a problem for her to enter the thunder-shocking realm within 10 years. At that time she can also help you a lot. Li Tianlan looked at Yu Donglai with a strange look in his eyes. Get lost. Yu Donglai scolded him with a smile and exhaled a mouthful of smoke. I said let Qingyan follow you and help you, not be your wife. You have a lot of love affairs in your life. I can't bear to let you harm my granddaughter, but she can still be an assistant. As he drove, his tone paused slightly. His smile faded and his eyes became a little lonely. Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, the god of war family, hey. You may not feel anything, but when an old guy like me looks at you, I really feel sad. Boy, you're the most down-and-out member of the god of war's family I've ever seen. You're all alone and have no one to rely on. Fortunately, you've worked hard. Otherwise, the Li family would really become a forgotten legend. Li Tianlan smoked silently and said softly, Thank you, Senior Yu. If I succeed, I will definitely treat Qingyan well. He could not refuse Yu Donglai, nor could he. This was the old man who fought with his grandfather in those days. Now he put his granddaughter by his side. Wasn't this also a kind of trust and dedication to the Li family? With his status, if the Li family was still there, Yu Donglai would definitely still be active on the top stage of Zhongzhou State. But now he could only live in a private home cuisine restaurant. His old contacts might still be there, but the wind and rain in Jianghu and the general trend of Zhongzhou State were getting farther and farther away from him. Was the old man really willing to accept such a result? If he was really willing, why did he put his granddaughter by his side? This was an old man's persistence and trust, and at the same time, it was his hope. What are you thanking me for? Yu Donglai threw away the cigarette but lit another one and said softly, The most important thing is to quickly build your own team. Your grandfather had 5 brothers with him and your father had 8 people with him. They are the most core and most reliable team, known as the Sacred Guards of the God of War family. You don't have this condition now, but I still hope you can move faster. If you are willing to trust me, then you can fully trust Qingyan. Boy, grow up quickly. I'm not urging you, but I'm old, and the older I get, the more impatient I am. If I can see the Li family reappear in Zhongzhou State and set up the big brand of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun in my lifetime, I will die without regret. He drove and muttered to himself, After I go down, I can also talk to those old brothers who left early. Li Tianlan tightly pursed his lips and said nothing. It seemed that he would never become a person who often patted his chest to make a promise. Most of the time he was silent and he seemed to be used to silence. Yu Donglai started to talk and said softly, We brothers at that time, the eldest was called War Bear, and he had thunder vein and was born with great power. His father used to be one of the sacred guards of His Highness's father. The eldest grew up with His Highness and he was the most loyal. He was with His Highness the earliest and he died the earliest. After he went to the border with His Highness, it was said that he died in the 2nd year. He was killed by the sneak attack and siege of the experts of Annan State. As an expert of the thundershocking realm or even a half-step to invincible realm, he died in such a grievance, but it made people respect him. The second was called Sirius and he was an assassin with wind vein. He came and went like a ghost and he was the most ferocious and cunning. Many of Quangtu's assassination skills were taught by Sirius. After Quangtu committed treason, His Highness was held accountable. The second was disheartened and went abroad. Later he was also accused of treason. But he was alone and he had nothing to worry about. In those years he was a lone ranger in the Dark World and he was famous in the Dark World. But 5 years ago, the second took a task to assassinate a person in Africa that he couldn't afford to offend. After the task failed, he also died. He was killed in 3 moves. This was the second brother who had the best relationship with me when I was young. When I heard the news, I almost went to Africa. But I couldn't go and it was useless to go there. So I could only stay in my small restaurant and muddle along. The third was called Qingdai and she was the third sister. She was a real expert in intelligence work. The third sister had 2 sons. In the last battle of Quangtu's treason, the third sister's son and husband served in Quangtu's army. As a result, after that battle, Quangtu committed treason. Her husband died and so did her eldest son. Only the youngest son was alive, but his legs were disabled. How tragic was that? When His Highness went to the border, the third sister didn't even show up, and she had no contact with me for many years. I guess she had a grudge against Quangtu, which was understandable. But it was a pity that such a beautiful woman when she was young became old. She died of brain cancer 3 years ago. When she died, she didn't even let her family come to tell me about her death. This kind of ruthlessness was not the third sister who risked her life to save me with the second brother when I was in a tight encirclement. The fourth is me, codenamed Poison Doctor. I have been with His Highness for the longest time, and my progress is the slowest. When I met His Highness, I was still doing scientific research in the biological laboratory of Zhongzhou State. I knew a little about martial arts, and the ice-condensing realm was just SOSO. Once I made a research report, and somehow I was targeted by a foreign dark force. They sent a squadron led by a thunder-shocking realm expert to kidnap my family. In order to save me, His Highness chased that group of people for nearly 800 kilometers. The lives of our family were saved by His Highness. Since then, I have been with His Highness. My strength is average, but my means of using poison are passable. Gradually, I also have some fame in the dark world. When Kwangtu committed treason, my son and daughter-in-law were also in Kwangtu's army. My son was an officer and my daughter-in-law was a military doctor. After that war they also died, leaving only me and Qingyan. When His Highness left, I went to see him off, but I didn't follow him. I don't know if His Highness will blame me for so many years. I don't hate His Highness nor Kwangtu, but I am not reconciled. I don't believe that Kwangtu would commit treason. I can't let my son die so inexplicably. I really can't. Yu Donglai lit the third cigarette. His voice was hoarse as if he was crying. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and opened his mouth. He wanted to say something but he couldn't say a word. He knew who Yu Donglai was talking about. His grandfather once said that he was the old brother who had followed him for the longest time. After his death, Li Tianlan was just 2 years old. He had long forgotten the old man's appearance, but he knew that after the old man's death, it was his grandfather who dug the grave and set up the monument. He was buried in the unknown cemetery behind the border camp. Next to the old man's grave, there was an empty grave. When he was a child, Li Tianlan had never known for whom the empty grave was erected. It was not until more than a year ago when he secretly returned to the border from the desert in Beijiang that his grandfather laughed and said that the empty grave was prepared for himself that night, when he was half drunk. Li Tianlan had also seen the old man's children, a son and a daughter. In his memory the uncle was quite tall and strong, and the aunt was plain but gentle. But now the old man's children also died at the border one after another, one after the other, less than a month apart. They were loyal and had no regrets, but in the end they didn't have a good end and had no descendants. Whose responsibility was it? The Li family had failed them and many people, such as Yu Donglai now, Qing Dai who died of illness a few years ago, and the 120,000 soldiers who were wiped out with his father's treason, as Gu Yunxia said. These old scores were all engraved in Li Tianlan's heart, dripping with blood and deeply engraved in his bones. Kunlun City. Prince Group. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly to hide the demonic red light in the depths of his pupils, and murmured softly, "There will be an explanation, there will be." Yu Donglai patted Li Tianlan's palm and didn't speak. "Senior Yu, where is Lao Wu?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while and continued to ask. "Lao Wu, he is the youngest of the 5 of us, just over 60 years old this year, right? When he was with His Highness, he could even be regarded as a young man. His code name was Fireman, known as the strongest expert in the fire-flaming realm. Until the end he never entered the thunder-shocking realm, but 8 or 10 people at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm died in his hands. Because he was young, he was sent by His Highness to serve as the second-in-command in Kwangtu's army. When Kwangtu committed treason, the border was chaotic and there were constant conflicts. He was on another front. But after Kwangtu committed treason as the second-in-command of the army, Lao Wu was also held accountable and was directly thrown into the desert prison by the people of the Prince Group. There has been no news for many years and no one knows whether he is dead or alive. At that time, His Royal Highness once said that among the 5 of us, Fireman was the first in terms of talent and was truly invincible. It is estimated that this sentence was one of the important reasons why Old Five was finally sent to the prison in the desert of the northern frontier. Yu Donglai sighed softly. When he said this, his tone was not so angry or hateful, only a kind of numbness and sadness close to despair. "Army?" Li Tianlan repeated. "Yes, the army. Zhongzhou State Border Praetorian Corps. 20 years ago your father was the commander of the army. At that time both father and son entered the decision-making committee, which symbolized the pinnacle of power in Zhongzhou State. With one family and one clan, they guarded the peace of a city and a country. How prominent was it? Who dared to disobey?" Yu Donglai's eyes were in a trance, full of memories. Li Tianlan's body stiffened slightly and then returned to normal. "I'm old and I like to talk nonsense. I've had thousands of words to say over the years, but I can't find the right person to say them to. When I first met you, you hid too deeply. I thought you were an idiot and I was not in the mood to say it. Now it's different. Where is an idiot? You are clearly a genius. Boy, don't let us old guys down, please. Yu Donglai shook his head violently and laughed. Li Tianlan nodded silently and said nothing. By the way, Yu Donglai held the steering wheel and turned a corner. Suddenly he said, the map of God of War of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun is known as the Bible of martial arts in the world. Which chapter of the map of God of War do you cultivate? The map of God of War. That was the supreme treasure of martial arts that represented all the martial arts inheritance of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. If taken out, it would probably be equivalent to a real martial arts manual. All the martial arts essences and unique skills of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun were recorded in it. Its value was simply inestimable. The 3 martial arts essences of the map of God of War were all the great way to the invincible realm. But which one was chosen would determine its final achievement. Yu Donglai used to be one of Li Honghe's closest confidants, so he naturally knew the key. Li Tianlan lowered his eyes slightly and said calmly, it's the invincible manual. What? Yu Donglai seemed to not hear it clearly and was stunned for a moment. The map of God of War, the invincible manual. Li Tianlan repeated it again. Bang. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.